Ah, so you made it on time.
Ish. It's like 3 minutes late. But I'm here.
Oh. Wait, have we started, or...?
Hello and welcome to Project Eradication Theory. Hello. Okay. We weren't late, even though I was at McDonald's at 10:59.
But it's 1 o'clock
What?
on Eastern Standard Time.
Yeah, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Yeah.
What about it?
Huh.
Yeah, we weren't late.
No, of course not.
So, how is everybody today?
Living the dream.
Pretty alright.
Got a wonderful Secret Santa gift that is now my profile pic.
Yes, hence the nickname change.
I saw that.
I'm surprised, like, you
I
didn't
was
respond
wondering.
to Cam being like, oh, new profile picture. And then like, oh yeah, it was a gift.
I was not paying attention to messages at the time.
Yes, because you were making this at the time.
Yes, alive and nominal. One day I'm coming for that dead body.
Huh?
You will never have it, Dark Xana.
Oh, this is gonna be a ride to the very end.
Oh no.
Just shoot,
Oh,
just shoot
boy.
Gregory.
Here we go.
Oh shoot, I can't hear any of you.
What do you mean?
I see the light. Hold on.
You can't?
Her Discord died. It's the end of the world.
Uh-oh. Well, guess it's just you and me. Until she comes back, but...
So, yes, last night, I went to look for Infinity Train, and I realized it's not on Netflix, it's on HBO. So then I'm like, is it on anything else?
Yeah, it's only on HBO Max.
It's $15 to buy the HD version on Amazon Prime.
Oh.
Yeetus McZotzu.
I did not know that.
Yeah, it's $15 for the first season. The second season's like $10. I was like, what?
Wow. That's, does it have the third season?
Maybe. I didn't check. I didn't know there was a third season. I thought the third season got canceled.
Yeah, there are 3 seasons. Nah.
So it's
Well,
the fourth
okay.
season that got canceled.
Is probably canceled? Yeah. It is likely canceled right now, so... Yeah, it sucks.
I've been meaning to watch Infinity Train for a while. Because
It's so
I saw
good.
because the art style is like Adventure Time on steroids. And that's why I wanted to watch it. 'Cause
Yeah,
I'm like,
pretty
oh, this looks like it's gonna be sort of a spin-off of that one episode with the train. But like it's its entirely own story. No, it's not really.
In a sense, but also no.
I think it takes the
Like, I can say there are some similarities.
infinite dungeon train. It takes the concept of this infinite
Yeah.
dungeon train, but does it in a completely different manner.
Yeah. And it's very fleshed out. So,
Oh, the Bexel's late too. What would you look at that?
can't believe it. Oh no.
All right, everyone, be angry
Poor
at flowers, flower dragons, headphone jack.
Can't believe it. That headphone jack.
Seen/read the Expanse. Is that
What?
supposed to be the name of something, and you just didn't capitalize it, Dark Xana?
Yeah. Dark Xana's right. She needs to put the thing in the thing. Then the thing will work.
Headphone
You know?
jack. Have you tried unplugging it and plugging it back in.
Oh my god.
The books, The Expanse.
Just buy a new PC.
Book. So, Dark Xana, please fix your S key, because expanse is spelled with an S, not a C.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Like,
I'm like,
I'm like, wait, what is he trying to say? Like, uh,
Sacra Blue.
ah, Spanish.
Oh my gosh. Spanish. Brilliant, Wazy, brilliant.
Thank you.
Let me get the screen share going.
That'll be good. I'm sure she'll be around at some point. Watch stream.
Well, I'm thinking we give Flower like another minute to fix her headphone jack.
That sounds good.
I think she's trying to do everything she can without restarting her computer. She still doesn't have an SSD for a boot drive.
Oh, jeez.
I know, it's like cursed images.
Yeah, I can't believe it.
I mean, it is an older desktop build, so I mean,
Maybe
I don't know
it's
how
time
old,
for a new computer.
but
Maybe it is time for a new computer, like Dark Xana said. What was that, Debexel? I need to look at the messages. Yeah, that was Dark Xana. I was right the first time.
can we have a count? No, Dark Santa, no.
10, 9, 8. Okay.
What was he right about, Wazy?
That she should buy a new computer.
No. Dark Xana. What was Dark Xana right about?
Dark Xana said she should buy a new PC. And
No, the Bexel said she should buy a
I'm
new.
like,
Oh wait,
yeah.
no, Dark Xana did.
No.
Wait, did everyone say
Yeah,
that,
exactly.
or was it just Dark Xana?
No, it was Dark Xana. It was just Dark Xana. That's why I'm like.
Try a restart, Flower.
Yeah, that might be work. Wait, can you not hear us,
She
Debexel? Or right.
No, he's like
That's yeah.
bask in my glory. No, I refuse to bask in your glory, Dark Santa.
Yeah.
I refuse to bask in your glory.
Anyways, Dark Xana is gone because now Xana is a nice human boy and it's great.
Hey, you can't be Dark Xana anymore, Dark Xana.
Yeah.
Code Lyoko?
I've never heard of the show Code Lyoko before in my
Wait,
life.
you should watch it.
What is
It is
that?
a perfect show with no flaws.
Really? I've never watched a show that was perfect with no flaws. Man, how have I
it has
not heard
no
of this
flaws.
Code Lyoko thing
You need to
before?
watch it.
That's
You
crazy.
need to watch it.
That's crazy, man. I gotta watch it. Yo, only on Cartoon Network?
Damn.
Well, now there's no other choice. I guess I'll have to watch this Code Lyoko show.
On Cartoon Network.
Yep, but wait, hold up. What are these foreheads? Like, I just Googled it, and what's going on there?
The foreheads are used to store the perfection energy that the show emanates. If the foreheads weren't there, you would die watching it because it's so perfect.
Okay, that makes sense. I understand now.
Right. The foreheads are
That's
just,
where they live.
the foreheads are perfection dampeners. Without them, you would literally die watching the show.
I understand.
Your body physically could not handle the
wouldn't be right.
perfection that is Code Lyoko if the foreheads weren't there.
It wouldn't be right for our mortal beings such as ourselves to take it in without these foreheads. I get it.
I got it.
Completely get it.
I
Hey,
had
the
to-
dragon,
Welcome back, dragon.
has
I had to
returned to the
plug
cave.
it. I had to plug it into the back of my computer. I've never had to do that before. But the front panel was like,
That's weird.
no, I mean, my front panel jack was going. I had my mic plugged into the back already, but like, normally I can twist it
Oh my gosh.
and it will eventually connect. But it was like, I twist it and then it would look like, oh, it's about to
Mhm.
connect, and then it just drops like almost immediately. And it did this repeatedly. I'm just like, finally, like, enough's enough.
Yeesh.
Maybe it'll
Yeesh.
work later, but that was
Fair
annoying.
enough. Hoping for the
Well
best.
then, I'd say it's time we start this chaos.
Yes.
Oh, Flower, you missed it. I was just telling
Here
Lazy
we
about this
go.
really good show called Code Lyoko. It's so perfect. They had to
Didn't you?
implement large foreheads as a dampening
Yeah.
measure so that you wouldn't die from watching the perfection. It's so good. So good. You have to watch it, Flower.
We should watch it on stream sometime.
Exactly. Whoa, that would be great! Experiencing Code Lyoko for the first time on stream. Now that, couldn't believe it.
All right, let's mute up and let's get going. We've waited long enough.
Here we go.
Chapter 16. Short Circuit. Memory grabbed Grigory's gun and aimed it at his head. Jeremy was in the middle of pulling the lever with both his hands to turn the supercomputer back on, gazing at the scene unraveling before him as if he had been hypnotized. The tower's golden glyphs regained their color as the young boy hoped he had saved his friends in time. Grigory gave the woman a cynical smile. "Just what do you plan on doing?" he said to her. "Shooting me down? That gun is a Desert Eagle. Its recoil is so strong that you'll break your nose. And you don't even know how to hold it correctly." Jeremy could see that Memory's muscles were tense under the effort of holding such a heavy gun straight. "Maybe so," responded the woman. "But I could also hit you by mistake. Drop the box to the supercomputer, get in the lift, and leave the room." "Drop the box to the supercomputer, get in the lift, and leave the room." Out of the question. Grigory took a step forward. Jeremy's gaze fell for a moment to his shoes. They were elegantly made with black varnish and leather soles that squeaked on the metal floor. He and Alita's mother, on the other hand, were wearing sneakers with large rubble soles, and that gave him an idea. He slipped away behind the supercomputer where he had prepared everything to short-circuit Hannibal Mago's command box. The box was now in Grigory's hands, and he had no way of taking it from him, but his system could still prove useful. Jeremy raised one of the floor panels and removed the safety fuses from the device that he had assembled. The boy's hands worked at full speed. He had studied these circuits all afternoon and knew them like the back of his hands. The only thing he was missing was a simple electrical overload. That way, the supercomputer would disperse the excess energy into the ground, then rid of the faulty circuit and automatically bring things back to their normal state. Jeremy disconnected one of the alternator's cables, paying extra attention to touch only the rubber insulation. He had a moment of doubt. Would their rubber soles be enough to protect them from the current? What would happen to his friends on Lyoko? With the cable tight between his fingers, as if he were gripping a venomous snake, the boy poked his head out from behind the tower. Grigory had gotten a bit closer to Memory, who seemed terrorized. The gun was clearly trembling between her hands. "Come on, play nice," said the man. "Give me the gun before you hurt yourself." Jeremy made his decision and pressed the cable against the base of the supercomputer. Immediately afterwards, a small black cloud A small cloud of black smoke rose from the device. Then it sparked. The metal became illuminated by a bright blue light. Memory gave a small shriek, and Gregory fell to the ground like a sack of potatoes. Jeremy felt the hair on his arms stand up. Jeremy felt the hair on his arm stand up. "Watch out!" Memory cried out. "Don't move!" Gregory's body spasmed on the ground before falling flat from the discharge, and Jeremy realized that the soles of his shoes had melted from contact with the metal tiles due to the heat. He needed to give them a yank to unstick them. Less than 2 seconds more had passed before a series of clicks warned them that the supercomputer had put its security system in place. The tiles instantly regained their natural color. "Thanks," said Memory, turning towards Jeremy, letting the gun fall to the floor. The boy approached Gregory. The man's eyes were closed, and he no longer seemed too dangerous. "He's unconscious. Help me tie him up before he recovers." Lone Wolf's feet were finally out of Richard's face, allowing him to breathe again. The ventilation shaft was so low and narrow that the back of his uniform was reduced to shreds, and the smell of sweat from the feet of the men in black agent in front of him had passed by Richard's nose too many times. He saw the agent land on the ground with a jump. He had detached the grill at the end of the tunnel and made his way out to look around. "Is anyone there?" whispered Richard. "Come on out. The path is clear." The young man finally made it to the end of the tunnel, and Lone Wolf helped him out. Then he turned around to give a hand to Hertz and the others. Richard looked all around. He was in a large room full of imposing machines. The enormous hunks of metal were all shut down, and the control panels were covered in large cloaks of dust. Drops of water fell on them from the ceiling and had made the floor smelly and slippery. "Where are we?" he whispered. Under the dining room that we saw earlier," Professor Hertz replied to him. Lone Wolf nodded. "Before beginning the mission, Dido made us learn the entire layout of the factory by heart. We are now in the turbine room, and if we continue this way, we should make it to a service tunnel that will lead us directly to the first floor underground. We're on the same level." Richard observed all the tired faces of the people that were with him. They were all well armed, but he wasn't sure that they'd be able to manage. "What are you planning on doing?" he asked. "We get to the control room, we eliminate the opposition, and we take control of this place," Lone Wolf replied with a smile. "We begin to fight." Richard gave a long sigh. This was exactly the response he was afraid to hear. The children had already arrived at the tower. It was in the desert sector, full of golden sand that disappeared beyond the horizon. Even though it wasn't hot, on Leoka, the temperature was always the same. There weren't seasons. It never rained. It was as if time didn't pass, and the sand never moved with the wind. Odd narrowed his eyes to look at Eva in the clear sky, who was turned towards him. The young girl seemed to be some sort of rock music sorceress, and Odd loved that. Of course, she wasn't really the same Eva that he knew from Caddick, but still, he preferred the real her more with her Yankee accent that altered all her words and made his head spin. A lot. "Hurry up!" the boy cried out without descending from his panther. "We're just missing you!" Eva nodded and leant forward on the guitar, nosediving at an insane speed. She pulled up at the last moment, just before crashing into the ground, then finally jumped off the guitar with a cheerful smile. "Wow!" she exclaimed. "This is the best thing that's ever happened to me!" But Odd continued to look fixedly at the sky with a worried expression on his face. Large, dark clouds were beginning to form on its once uniform surface. "What is it?" commented Eva, breaking out in laughter. "Afraid of a storm?" "There are never storms on the Yoko," murmured the boy. He turned towards his friends. All of them were already inside the tower, except for Ulrich, who was waiting for them atop the back of his manta ray. He also looked to the sky. "Uh-oh," he said. The clouds were gathering right above their heads, becoming darker and more menacing. Then lightning began to clash. The first bolt reached the tower, making it shimmer in a million sparks. The second fell right by the feet of Odd's panther, leaving a dark crater on the terrain. The boy leapt to the side thanks to the agility of his animal. "I don't understand. What the heck is Jeremy doing? First they shut down the supercomputer, and now this?" "The important thing," Ulrich answered, "is that we get materialized as soon as possible." Eva nodded. "He's totally right. Let's head back to the tower. Santa's waiting for us." The second underground floor in the factory was being guarded by 6 soldiers sat in a circle beside the scanners. 3 of them were European and discussing the scores to the most recent football games. The others were Asian and quietly speaking about buzkashi, a violent game from their native land similar to polo, except instead of competing to get a ball, they compete over the buzz, a goat carcass without a head or limbs. The soldiers were very bored. They had been there for hours without moving in front of these scanners, without even having a simple television set to watch. There hadn't been the usual shift change, so they were forced to skip dinner. "I don't get it," exclaimed one of them, getting to his feet. "Why is no one coming? Our shift already ended a while ago." Another, who had been speaking Mongolian up until now, immediately switched to French. Try to stay calm. You know how things work when we're given a mission. Suddenly, a whirring sound could be heard, and the soldier turned towards the scanners. He aimed a submachine gun in the same direction. What's going on? He murmured. The man had worked for Green Phoenix for years. He had fought in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. At this point in his life, he was convinced he'd seen everything, but he wasn't prepared for this show. Set atop his Panther, Odd was the first to exit the scanners. Yeah! He cried triumphantly. Xana's plan had worked. Thanks to the pendant, he had been materialized in the real world in his feline form, and on the back of a panther. The boy noticed the presence of the soldiers. One of them was on his feet and pointing his gun in his direction. "Laser arrows!" cried Odd while firing a barrage of small blades of light from his fists at the man. The soldier began firing bullets that flew very close above Odd's head, ricocheting off the walls of the room. After that, the laser arrows hit their target, throwing him into the wall. Arrows had bolted his uniform to the wall, and the barrel of the gun was cut in half. The man uttered something in an unknown language, but Odd wasn't paying attention to him. The panther jumped against one of the walls of the room and turned around, while the boy began to fire another barrage of arrows. He saw that Auric had come out of the second column and Yumi from the third. The young samurai had already unsheathed his sword and was about to confront one of the soldiers as Yumi opened her fans. "There's only 6, protested Odd. "Leave them to me." With his Lyoko powers, he felt capable of taking on an entire army. Auric hopped off his manta ray, slashed apart the guns of 2 soldiers, and took them down in several kung fu moves. "Yumi and I will take care of the guys over there. Then we'll head to the entrance of the factory. Go with Eva and Alita to the first underground floor and take over the command post." Alita then came out from the scanner on her unicorn at full gallop. The creature lowered its horn, forcing one of the soldiers to the ground, and Yumi immediately attacked him. "Roger that," said Odd, seeing that Eva was also exiting the scanner. "Come with me. We must reconquer the supercomputer." Deep within this turbine room was a half-rusted iron panel. Richard was remaining there to keep watch while Lone Wolf, Weasel, and Ferret were picking the lock closing off the passageway and trying to push the metal cover off. Behind the panel was a vertical tunnel. It was a sort of dark and humid, thick cement channel, just over 1.5 meters in diameter, that went on further than the eye could see, descending down towards the 2nd and 3rd floors underneath the factory. Just in front of them, on the opposite wall of the channel, was a closed door. It was the entrance to the control room where the command post was for the supercomputer. The only thing left to do to reach the door was to jump without thinking too much of the size of the tunnel. They needed to latch onto one of the supports on the other side to climb up and finally open the iron panel. "It's really starting to smell," commented Walter Stern. We won't be able to all enter at the same time." "No," confirmed Lone Wolf. "One of us will need to get to the other side and open the door. The others will stay here to cover them in case the terrorists are waiting for us." Hertz and Lone Wolf discussed a plan of attack for a moment, while Richard and Michael Belpois went to search for necessary materials. They found a coil of electric cables under a large panel. It was thick enough to support the weight of an adult man. They returned to the entrance of the tunnel, struggling with the weight of the coil, and helped Weasel attach himself to the cable around the waist. Then the agent suspended nearly his entire body above the abyss of the well and jumped towards the other side. The cable moved behind him like the tail of a distraught animal. Weasel reached out his arms and missed the first support by a hair, but immediately managed to grab hold of a lower one. He turned towards Richard with a big smile on his face. "Perfect," he said, trying to catch his breath. "I'll climb as quickly as I can." The agent climbed up to the door that connected the turbine room to the supercomputer's controls. Lone Wolf observed him with his gun ready. By his side was Professor Hertz, and behind him Richard and Walter Stern. The Ishiyamas and Michael Belpois, who were also armed, were waiting to the side of the others. The agent brought a hand towards the lever to open the door, but it moved before he could touch it. The metal panel slid to the side, revealing a narrow passageway from which a gun immediately opened fire. Lone Wolf and Hertz immediately threw themselves to the ground. Richard lowered his head so that a barrage of bullets flew above his shoulders, creating a ton of sparks against the gigantic turbine behind him. 2 seconds later, the young man managed to reopen his eyes. The command room was so close. Richard saw the seat pivoting and the semi-transparent colored globe that was floating in front. Lyoko. But the room was full of soldiers, and all of them were armed and ready to fight with all their might. At their lead was a man elegantly dressed in yellow from head to toe. "Hannibal Mago," growled Lone Wolf. The agent leaned in towards the inside of the maintenance well, gave 2 blind shots towards the room, then took cover again. Meanwhile, Weasel was still in the channel, holding on tight with his body flat against the wall like a gecko in camouflage. Suddenly, the agent cried out, losing his grip on the supports, and began to fall down the abyss. Richard pulled the electric cable that was attached to the agent. The young boy felt adrenaline coursing through him. He felt like he couldn't think clearly. All around him set off a storm of shouting and bullets. He tried to stay calm. Weasel weighed too much for him, and his arms weren't strong enough to pull him up. He let the cable slide slowly through his hands, descending bit by bit. After all, the tunnel must end sooner or later, and down below, Weasel would be safe from the bullets. When Richard finally felt the cable relax, he brought his hands to his mouth and called out, "Hey man, did you make it?" Yes. There's also a door down here, but it's shut and needs a numerical security code." A new barrage of bullets forced Richard to take cover behind the wall. If something didn't happen fast, they wouldn't have the slightest chance. Hannibal Mago was furious. Something must have happened on the third floor. He had sat for several minutes at the command post, but no robot had appeared to obey his orders. That damn brat, Jeremy, tried to play him for a fool. And now yet another conundrum. The prisoners were free and had somehow managed to arm themselves. It was too bad they found themselves on the other side of the well, however. From there, they were nothing more than simple human targets. Hannibal Mago saw one of his soldiers fall back, hit in the arm by a projectile. He took a weapon in his hands, an AK-47, took a step towards the tunnel and loaded it on his adversaries. Then he stood petrified. What the hell was he doing? The priority was to keep himself safe. His men would take care of the intruders. He made a U-turn towards the lift and saw the door slide open to the side. The man smiled, expecting to see the rough face of Grigory Nictopoulos. But instead, there were three strangely dressed kids. One was riding a panther, the other was atop a unicorn, and the third was on an electric guitar. The three soared into the room and attacked the soldiers. Mago threw himself to the ground and ran on all fours as the brats dove from one side of the room to the next with the fury of an entire army. It was time to run for the hills. Chapter 17. Mago's Escape. In slow motion, Odd saw the soldier behind him lift his weapon, and in the midst of all the confusion he seemed to hear the click of the trigger. There was a deafening explosion, and the boy closed his eyes, gripping the short, gleaming coat of the panther with all his might. The creature jumped, carrying him up high, and for a moment he couldn't tell which way was up. When he reopened his eyes, he realized that he was still in one piece. The soldier was splayed out on the floor beneath the claws of the digital panther, complaining in a foreign language. "Yee-hee! Yeah!" Odd cried, his shout becoming a crazed, wild laugh. The boy quickly analyzed the situation. Alita and Eva were doing superbly. The unicorn galloped between the soldiers, throwing them to the ground with violent kicks, while its elf rider threw energy fields. Eva shouted tirelessly, creating a shower of sharp notes in all colors that battered the Green Phoenix men. Some of them had already dropped their weapons and fled. Odd turned just in time to see the lift door close. In the cabin was a man dressed in yellow. "Hannibal Mago is escaping!" someone yelled. The boy turned in the direction of the voice. "Hannibal Mago is escaping!" someone yelled. The boy turned in the direction of the voice. The person who called out was Professor Hertz, who was on the other side of the narrow opening. Odd scrutinized the door. It wasn't very large, but he made a decision. He dug his heels into the panther's flanks and lay down along its spine, his face pressed against its soft fur, trying to stay as low down as possible. The creature immediately understood his intentions and crossed the room at a dizzying speed while Mago's soldiers leapt out of the way so as not to be barreled over. The panther leaned over the opening, angled its head, stuck its paws out in front and jumped. It flew across the 1.5-meter wide vertical tunnel and landed on the other side between the turbines. Odd greeted the Ishiyamas. Then he saw Richard and his face lit up. "Would you happen to know if we can go down from here?" Yes, Richard babbled, a distraught expression on his face. "We came through the ventilation shafts, but I mean, there are stairs." "Perfect!" exclaimed Odd. "In that case, hop on." "But where?" "Well, on the panther's back, of course. We're going to give Mago what's coming to him once and for all." Auric and Yumi approached each other and took one another's hand. Then they smiled and embraced. You did great," said Auric, his gaze drawn to the girl's deep, dark eyes. "I say that we both did amazingly," she responded with a smile. And indeed they had. All the soldiers in the scanner room had been neutralized. They were now all in a corner, tied up in pairs. Each soldier carried a pair of handcuffs on their belt, and they had proven very useful for the children. Auric's manta ray was on the floor, and now seemed like a large orange rug. The silver fox was beside it, its head between its paws. "So what do we do now?" Yumi asked. Auric shrugged and thought about it for a moment. "Let's go to the factory ground floor and finish the job." The lift was in use. The children pressed the call button and waited impatiently for the door to open. When the container finally brought them up with the low sound of the creaking of cables and the door opened, they were greeted by a very real war zone. There were dozens and dozens of soldiers shooting at one another, hiding behind piles of metal beams, or taking cover behind trolleys of equipment and enormous bobbins of cables. Some of them were dressed in the Green Phoenix's green uniform, and others wore neoprene wetsuits and large bulletproof vests of the same color. Yumi let out a slow breath, stupefied. "Let's join the battle," encouraged Auric. The little samurai jumped onto his manta ray and drew his katana. A throwing knife as sharp as a razor blade hurtled towards Ulrich, and the boy sliced right through its middle with a perfectly calculated two-handed swing of his sword. He then plunged headfirst into the melee of bodies, shouts, and bullets. Dido and Principal Dalmas were in the science laboratory. The woman, who wore a pair of large headphones that hid her ears, kept her eyes riveted on her computer monitors. By her side, Dalmas silently observed everything, seated on a chair far too small for his stature. The principal was afraid. Dido knew this, and she, too, was afraid. But there was no going back. The clock on the wall in front of them showed that it was 18 minutes past midnight. The image on the main monitor trembled for a moment, to then draw the lines that made up Maggie's face. "So," said Dido, tautly, after letting out a sigh, "we've received the preliminary report from Aerial Squadron 1 and Infantry Squadron 3. Unfortunately, there's no good news. Someone blew up the bridge between the bank and the island, and the Green Phoenix's defensive weapons prevented our Delta planes from landing on the factory roof. These two teams are now isolated outside." Dido let out yet another deep sigh. Thanks to the headphones, Principal Dalmas hadn't heard a single word, but he must have figured out something after seeing her expression. The woman had her hands on her knees, tense like claws, crumpling her pants, and the veins in her forearms were beginning to swell. "And Squadron 2?" she asked, not without fear. "The frogmen made it to the objective. Unfortunately, the sides of the island were covered in alarms that alerted the terrorists. We lost contact with them, but thanks to Squadron 3's reports, we know that a gunfight took place inside the building. Tell Squadron 3 that they need to get to the Hermitage. I want that house terrorist free as soon as possible." Dido opened a window on the screen. It was the image of a fighter bomber, an F-16 with no distinctive markings and triangular wings loaded with missiles. Black Raven. "At what level are we in the other operation?" Dido asked. "Black Raven left our secret base in Ireland on time. It will reach the objective at the set time." "Good," commented Dido. She paused a moment to think before continuing. "I want peer-to-peer radio communication to be in contact with the pilot. I'll be the only person who can communicate with him." The secretary nodded. "I sincerely hope that Black Raven will return to base with all its cargo, madam." "Yes, Maggie, I hope so too." Odd and Richard left the staircase behind them and arrived in the machine room that Mago's soldiers had turned into a lunchroom. When the panther burst into the room, all the men leapt to their feet and brandished their weapons. Odd spurred his creature. It bounded and galloped towards the row of tables with a terrifying roar. Richard responded with a small, scared whimper. It was Odd's favorite style, a classy, grand entrance. The boy stood up on the back of the panther as it ran and readied himself. While Richard continued his insane race across the tables, he grabbed into a tube coming out of the ceiling and, using it like a gymnastic bar, he spun around, shooting laser arrows left and right. He aimed with great precision, destroying weapons, disarming the soldiers, and throwing knives flying as they hurtled into the room like a deadly swarm. He then let himself fall, landed on the back of a soldier and knocked him upside down, ran across the table, and continued to shoot arrows low to the ground. He was having the time of his life. Yumi had already figured out how things worked. The soldiers in green were the bad guys, and the ones in black were good. When she and Ulrich arrived, the ones in black were losing the battle. There were few of them, while the Green Phoenix soldiers were like the heads of the Lernaean Hydra. However, the two children had already shifted the balance of forces on the battlefield. It was like they were everywhere at once. Ulrich appeared in the middle of the confrontation on his manta ray, spinning his sword around like a helicopter rotor, while Yumi's silver fox flashed here and there throughout the room, dancing between shadows and stacks of beams to then attack the terrorists by surprise. The girl spotted the thin metal columns holding up the framework of the footbridge glisten as it caught the light. Her fans cut through the air, slicing straight through the columns as if they were made of butter before returning to her hands. The Green Phoenix soldiers huddled together under the platform raised their heads, distracted by a groaning sound from above, and saw as the footbridge fell on top of them. "Nice shot!" called a voice. Yumi turned around and smiled. Odd and Richard had entered through a door. The older boy was lying on the back of the large panther, which seemed to be out of control, while Odd followed him in long jumps, pushing himself off any surface, be they horizontal or vertical. He looked like a real cat. "Watch out for the guy dressed in yellow!" he immediately shouted. "It's Hannibal Mango!" Yumi turned in the direction Odd was pointing, and a number of the men in black did the same, to immediately open fire. The girl saw the boss of the Green Phoenix, who, hurling all sorts of colorful curses and insults, pulled out a large silver gun from his vest to return fire at his enemies. He then hid behind a column to reload his weapon. When he came out from behind his refuge, for a fraction of a second the man and the girl's eyes met. Mago then fired 6 times in a row. Yumi's fox bounded to the side so that the girl wouldn't be hit by the bullets, but they hit it right in the chest. "No!" Yumi cried. Beneath her, the fox transformed into a shining cascade that dissolved in the air like cinders. The geisha rolled to the floor. A new volley of shots forced her to jump to one side, to safety. Odd arrived beside her and ducked behind a trolley that lay on its side. Yumi gave the man an icy stare. "Mago will pay for that. Let's go get him." Org fought with incredible ardor. The manta ray fired lasers from his tail while the boy used his martial arts skills to attack using his sword, dodge, and kick his enemies. Richard wasn't doing too bad either, especially thanks to the panther. "Ulrich," Yumi called, "Odd and I will take care of Mago." The boy jumped from the manta ray in a circular kick that sent 2 soldiers to the floor. He turned and raised 2 fingers as a sign of victory. "Okay, the situation's already under control here." Yumi smiled. She and Odd then exchanged glances and both leapt from behind the trolley. The boss of the Green Phoenix had hoisted himself up onto one of the footbridges that was still intact, and was running madly for the doors leading to the offices. Odd took a running jump that landed him directly on the footbridge, bouncing off it as if his legs were springs. Yumi also did a spin in the air, grabbing onto a beam hanging from an old crane and used it like a pendulum to join her friend. "Where'd he go?" she asked Odd once she'd reached his side. "This way." Beneath them, the battle became more intense. The 2 children ran along the footbridge and forced open the door Mago had shut behind. Beneath them, the battle became more intense. The 2 children ran along the footbridge and forced open the door Mago had shut behind him seconds earlier. They were in a room full of gloomy-looking machines. It wasn't a very big space, although the ceiling was very high up. There was a framework of staircases that led from the room to one higher up, the last floor before arriving on the roof. He could be hiding anywhere," whispered Odd. But his sentence was interrupted by the sound of another door closing with a clack. The 2 children raced up the stairs, preparing themselves for combat. Another new room with yet more machinery. This time, the ceiling was a large glass expanse that looked extravagant that way the light of the moon shone through it. Hannibal Mago, clearly visible thanks to his ridiculous canary yellow suit, was climbing along an enormous press. The boss of the Green Phoenix seemed to know this place like the back of his hand. Once he was on top of the machine, massive and covered in gray dust, he stretched out to the glass ceiling and broke one of the panes with the butt of his gun. "Stop!" Yumi shouted. She threw her 2 fans, but the man was quicker than her, and after heaving himself up, he made it up onto the roof, disappearing from view. Yumi got her fans back. She and Odd ran to the press Mago had climbed up and remained on their guard in case of gunfire, but the only thing that came to them from the factory roof was deep silence. The 2 children jumped, found the hole the man had smashed in the glass, and followed him. They now found themselves on the roof of the factory. It was a sloping terrain made of metal and glass that led to the outer gutters, painted an intense gray like mercury by the moonlight. It was very cold up there, and the wind blew so hard it threatened to knock Yumi off balance, slipping on the smooth soles of her wooden geisha sandals. Hannibal Mago was moving along the slope of the roof towards a small platform of red bricks a little lower down. On the platform, there was a case, a metal container on which the symbol of the Green Phoenix had been emblazoned. The man heard the noise the children made behind him and turned his head to look at them while continuing to move forward, slipping and flailing his hands like a large, scared spider. Odd made a step onto a pane of glass, causing it to make a sinister creaking sound, before quickly retreating back onto the iron supports. "Watch where you're going," Yumi said. "This thing could break at any moment." The girl removed her sandals and began to walk in bare feet, following her friend. There was too much wind for her to use her fans, and Mago was too far away for Odd's arrows. They continued on in silence, putting one foot in front of the other, arms spread wide to keep their balance, like a couple of tightrope walkers. Mago moved in a disorderly fashion. He lost his nerve. He still held his gun in one hand, and the weapon bothered him. He placed one foot on a pane of cracked glass, which broke in 2 beneath his weight. Yumi heard a curse and saw the man get back to safety on the iron framework. Mago turned towards them again, noticed the technique the children were using, and he too began to walk on a large imaginary rope, one slow step after the other. Odd shot several arrows, but they hit the crystalline surface without reaching their target. Meanwhile, the boss of the Green Phoenix made it to the brick platform, ducked behind the case, and returned fire. Yumi heard the gunshot, turned around and saw Odd fall backwards. The shot? It wasn't possible! Mago had managed to hit him! The catboy became enveloped in a dense cloud of blue sparks and disappeared. The girl fixed her gaze on the boss of the Green Phoenix, glaring with complete loathing. She knew that Odd would just appear back in one of the factory scanners completely unharmed, but she couldn't stop thinking about what would have happened to her friend had he not possessed his Lyoko powers. She growled. Mago threw his gun to the side and busied himself opening the case. From it he took a strange metal backpack with large tubes on the lower part. He frantically donned the device, threading his arms to the stiff braces, which he then attached to his upper thighs, and seized a rectangular object that was connected to a side of the backpack by a cable. It seemed just like a video game controller. Mago pressed a button, and the metal backpack lit up with a low noise, to then spit out dense flames from its lower tubes. Finally, Yumi understood what it was, a jetpack. She had seen them in films, but she had never thought that something like that could truly exist. The boss of the Green Phoenix pressed another button, and with a crack, from behind his shoulders opened 2 small wings. He then flew up a few meters. The jet from his propulsion units made the glass part of the roof around him explode into tiny pieces. Hannibal Mago was going to escape without even a scratch. Yumi breathed deeply and began to run on the thin metal beam. She then did a cartwheel with more style than a professional gymnast and landed on the brick platform. The girl, who was now right up behind the man, jumped up and threw her fans, but Mago had noticed her maneuver and spun around, making a tight turn in the air. The fans missed their target and quickly returned to Yumi. The terrorist boss pressed the buttons on the box in his hands and propelled himself backwards. From his throat came a mad laugh, like he was cawing in triumph. "See you never, brat!" For a split second, Yumi saw the light reflect off his golden canine teeth, and then the man turned back around and began to fly off the factory roof and towards the river, gaining speed. He was escaping, and Yumi could no longer stop him. But as soon as he arrived at the gutters, Hannibal Mago heard the sound of fire erupting, accompanied by the disgusting stench of petrol. He'd forgotten the flamethrowers he had installed to prevent possible aerial attacks. The boss of the Green Phoenix let out a cry. He quickly manipulated the jetpack controls, and the backpack zoomed upwards just as one of the jets of fire gushed out beneath his feet. He instinctively raised his hands to protect his face. This would prove to be a big, huge mistake. At first, Yumi didn't understand what was happening. She saw the man hurriedly change direction and climb up into the sky while the factory roof burst alight beneath him, creating a compact wall of fire. Then, all of a sudden, triggered by the dense smoke that rose from the lower part of his jetpack, Mago started to spin around and around at high speed. The boss of the Green Phoenix flew far above the wall of flames and off into the sky, drawing behind him a trail of light like a comet. The flamethrowers extinguished at the same speed they had lit, and in the darkness that flooded the night, Yumi saw Hannibal Mago lose altitude and arc into the silent river, sending up a great splash of water.
Of course, the villain being cocky is why he gets caught.
Yep.
It's not Code Lyoko. That doesn't happen.
Yep.
Bruh, indeed.
I appreciate Chronicles for pulling out. I appreciate Chronicles for pulling out one last weird thing with the jetpack. Like, sure, sure.
The jetpack
It's one of the more
isn't...
plausible things in this ending.
May as well.
I mean, jetpacks are like a thing in real life.
That's true.
They're not practical.
That's true, but still.
Also, when you're an evil multi-millionaire, as the book implies, Mago might even be a billionaire. I don't know. He's evil and he has a fuck of a lot of money. He can own a jetpack.
Who knows?
He has the money to own a jetpack. That works.
His
Fair
plan.
enough.
It was his backup plan anyway.
Okay, but it just
Not
also kind of came out of nowhere. It just kind of came out of nowhere is the thing. Like, it just appears.
Like, yeah, but that's the point. No one would have noticed it, and obviously the evil villain would have a escape plan.
Fair.
Dark
but
Xana,
it's just,
is that a last week tonight quote?
I mean, there are references and decisions he's made that really imply he's more cocky than he should be. And like, yeah, maybe he used to be better when he was poor. He was the poor farmer boy that was enlisted in the military, worked his way up, and he's just gotten complacent now. He's just like, I'm gonna...
Well, the books make it very clear Grigory's the one who's doing all of the strategic planning.
I posited that theory yesterday. And
so it's entirely possible Mago just is like, oh, Grigory's so good, nothing will ever happen to me. I just need to make sure I just need to make the plans and everything, and then Grigory will do all the specifics.
That is what cues him in the end, is he gives the box to Grigory, trusting him to put it in the machine. He goes up to the command post to get his robot, and Grigory's like, yeah, I don't trust any of you. And he shuts it down, screwing almost... If he succeeded, he would have screwed everybody over and have just gotten away with his life. I think that was his plan. But instead he gets captured by the Men in Black.
Grigory's mistake was not calling the elevator back down and then hitting the button and leaving immediately.
No, he's like, oh, what is this woman and child gonna do to me? I have a gun, like, and I'm a trained,
Anthea should have just shot him, unpopular opinion.
Yeah, he should have, but he was being cocky.
No, Anthea should have just shot him.
Oh,
unpopular
I misread
opinion. I mean, yeah, he should
yeah,
have just
probably.
shot them too, but
Yeah.
like,
But she was nervous. I mean, this guy had been like tormenting her for like decades.
I mean,
It's
nervous people
implied.
are more likely to accidentally pull a trigger
True.
than non-nervous people. It's a statistical fact. What can go wrong? Everyone kill everyone. Yes.
The story just ends with everyone dead, and the Men in Black find like a factory full of corpses.
And honest,
Genocide ending.
and back to the factory full of corpses. The F-16 isn't like, I get not doing a lot of research sometimes when you write a book, because some things are just non-details, but like an F-16 is a multi-role fighter. It's not meant to carry building or large building flattening levels of munitions.
I just suspect what the author did is they heard about the F-16 from before, and they're just like, we'll use that because I'm sure it'll be used for this purpose, and didn't really double check his knowledge.
I mean, it takes 2 seconds to look up stealth bomber and get like the B2, which is.
I mean, look at this. Look at what's happening.
There's a lot of instances where this book just like this author didn't look up anything about this specific topic, and it shows. There's a couple moments where it's like, I think the author meant to use this this noun or this like well-known brand or whatever, and it just doesn't. It's like, hello? Did you even think? And I mean, I think some of this could just be, you know, translator, like not trying to pick something people might recognize more, and then just throwing it, not doing it properly. Like, because I know for a fact more people would recognize an F-16 than a B2, but I think that F-16 was probably in the original translation, because it's just not, it's like, people are either going to know what the aircraft is, or they're just going to be like, oh, it's a military aircraft. It must be able to blow up buildings.
I mean, I didn't pick up on the F-16 nonsense, so, like, I mean, I'm busy nitpicking, like, it didn't even, this person didn't even do their proper research on the source material.
Yeah,
let alone, like, little
true.
things like using the wrong type of military aircraft for bombing the
it's
factory.
It's not like one F-16 couldn't do it, but if you had a squadron of like 4 of them, you could. It wouldn't be a very efficient destruction. You still might not even destroy the supercomputer, but you would be able to flatten the upper part of the building. A single F-16? No. No, you wouldn't. You'd probably take out a quarter of the building, and that's it.
It's also possible it has this super awesome and mysterious unknown special type of bomb that's designed specifically to drop down, dig itself in, and then attack the supercomputer, which has nuclear components which would nuke, I guess.
Bunker busters are really big bombs. I don't know. An F-16 could maybe carry one, but I
was literally just making stuff up off the top of my head.
No, those are called bunker busters. They implant themselves into the ground and then they explode to basically their intent. Well, so they do 2 things. They either burst through concrete in the roof of a bunker, or they implant in the ground and then the shock wave from the explosion propagates through the earth really quickly, and then it collapses caves and tunnels and whatnot. So but they're generally fairly large bombs, because you either need a lot of weight to get through all the concrete, or you have a lot of explosive material to just disintegrate the concrete. And as for using the nuclear tip missiles that I believe the F-16 could carry, they're very small nuclear explosives, but you don't want to set a nuke off in the middle of France, in the middle of a river, in
Yeah.
France.
You could spend all day nitpicking why this wouldn't work or doesn't make sense.
But
I think
that's sort of this book's thing,
It's
isn't
just
it?
Chronicles.
this is Chronicles.
Also, there's
Yeah.
Madness?
When-
No,
earlier-
this is
earlier-
Chronicles.
No, earlier one's like, there's never any storms on Lyoko. There's like, I think there's at least 3 instances where there's a storm on Lyoko, or there's like just
Season
weather
1.
effects. Yeah, in season 1
Season
there's
1.
the desert tornado, the sand
Yeah.
tornado.
Again, that's the disconnect from the main source
I think
material.
there's the fog in the mountain sector in I think
Yep.
season 2.
Is that a thing in season 2?
It's,
Oh, no, I think I do remember. There's, like,
it's
in-
season 2.
Yeah.
It's like a fog, and they made some invisible
No.
platforms.
It's the one where
It's
Ulrich
season
is
3,
in the forest sector
actually.
by himself, being
Oh.
a complete Chad.
It's season 3.
Is it season 3? It's the episode where Ulrich's defending the forest sector by himself.
That's season 3.
Is it? Okay.
That's season 3. Yeah, well, there are multiple instances of fog in the mountain sector.
A Eurofighter,
think
not an
that's season
F-16. You're the one who's... Never mind,
So,
Dark Xana.
yeah.
You're the one who said the... Never mind. Okay, well, yeah, but so there's the fog, and then is there another... Is it those two, or is there another
I
one?
will say there is no thunderstorms
That's fair.
in the show, like what they portray in the books.
That's fair.
I mean, again, we could go all day complaining about how the Lyoko Chronicles doesn't align with the Lyoko of the original. At
I'm
least
just like,
Evolution
this-
got that right. Like, yeah, it dropped 2 sectors, but it had an in-universe explanation for it, even if
Memory
that
dropped
explanation's freaking, yeah.
I mean,
I don't agree with it, but you know.
Does this theoretically mean that there was like 8 sectors when Franz turned the computer off?
I
and those,
don't-
like.
I don't think so, but I'd like to. I think it's an
Yeah.
idea to play with, honestly.
I
Like,
mean,
and-
where do you think
yeah.
Xana got the idea for the volcano sector? in the
Franz
game?
just...
I mean, the volcano
Mm.
sector is also in one of the comics. It just kind of shows up. That's a weird comic because Jeremy just gets randomly transported to Lyoko because he's just chilling in a scanner moping, and Xana's like, perfect opportunity, and now he's in the land of misfit monsters. Yes, really, that's the premise of that comic.
Yep.
He shows him in the volcano sector with misfit broken monsters, and he befriends them. It's
And then William attacks and kills them.
The fuck?
yeah. I think that is what happens.
So it's the
Yeah.
Island of Misfit Toys from Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
Except it's volcanoes.
Except it's the
And
volcano
Xana monsters.
sector.
Yes.
It's Xana's monsters, and they all die.
Yes.
Why the fuck
Yes.
does that exist?
Maybe I will read
because
the
Code
comics
Lyoko
next stream.
comics.
I thought this would be the last stream, but
Well, this
I
is,
mean,
this is
I-
gonna we are gonna take a week
Oh my god.
break.
Fair.
Oh my god.
2 weeks because the week after is Christmas.
It never ends.
Well, Christmas is on a Friday,
2
not a
weeks,
Saturday.
yeah.
Well, maybe.
Also,
Maybe I'll do that. Maybe I will just
You want
record the
people to come
comics.
in on the
oh my
26th.
god.
I think it will only
Are we
take.
gonna make it a year? Are we gonna somehow make a year's worth of rewatch content?
I don't think the comics are gonna take more than like a stream or two. They're not that long.
I guess.
Let's see. We have to get to March. I think it is.
I don't think
No.
we're gonna
30s
go
of
that long.
March.
Then let's do the graphic novels after that.
There's graphic novels.
Let's do the graphic novels.
Where are the graphic novels? I want now. Are they real? Is this a joke or are they real? And if they're real,
You didn't
where?
know. Oh.
The graphic novels are real. The graphic novels are real.
Isn't it? It's just the book version of the
Yes,
art
they
Bible,
are.
isn't it?
No, they're real. They're real.
Give me a link. Give
They're
me a
real,
source.
but I think they're mostly
want.
just retellings of episodes.
I don't care. I want
Yes!
in.
Oh my god.
Yes.
Well, now
No,
I'm
no, they're
excited.
actual Code Lyoko graphic novels.
Flower, calm
Let me
down.
see.
Calm
Hold
down.
up. Let me see if
Calm
I
down.
don't know if they're
Keep it
archived
in your
online,
pants.
but
Hey,
hold up.
I'm excited. Not in that way. I'm excited, just not in that way.
They're just retellings of episodes, but they exist.
Morbid curiosity, man. I have to see. You
Oh
know
my
I'm a
God.
fiend.
Like,
You're a
I'm gonna
fiend for
go.
CL.
I'm just gonna go die. Oh my gosh! I just realized Nick showed up. Hi, Nick. Nick's been here for 11 minutes. Holy crap! He's just been buried in the wall of Dark Xana text. You gonna find it, Wazy? Or you just gonna leave? You gonna blue ball her here? Oh well, this is ostensible silence.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Looks like I'm alive. Let me see if I can find
Dark
these.
Xana, DM it to me. I'll tell you whether it's a good idea or not.
Let's see if I can find these, cause oh man.
Oh,
Hmm.
Nick, dude,
Okay, these are the.
you didn't say
Yeah, that's a
anything
link to the
earlier.
comics, but
I'm scrolling up and down. You haven't said anything. Oh shit, that's right. Hold on. Twitch starts deleting the chat after a while. I'm sorry, Nick. Dark Xana, I said DM it to me. I'll tell you whether it's a good idea or not. You haven't DM'd it to me yet, man.
It's
I'm
probably
sorry,
still
Nick.
working on it.
Oh, you mean like physically typing? Here,
Also,
I can
we
check.
love you,
Oh,
Nick.
he is typing it. Wow, this is gonna be long then. Oh, he's doing 3 things at the same time. That's why it's taking so long.
You brought this upon yourself.
Maybe I did. Maybe I deserve it.
Ah, jeez, things are taking forever to load.
It's not the Kolyoko Cinemanga Volume 1, is it? From Westfield Comics?
Probably that. Probably that, yeah.
Oh, it's out of stock.
Is it?
Those, yeah, those.
Where are you looking for it? Like
I
Amazon?
just googled Kolyoko
Yeah.
graphic novels.
They used to have one of these at like my
Library? Wheezy? Library? School library?
yeah.
Fighting.
Oh, sorry.
Wrong
Yeah,
monitor.
when I was a kid, what's it? My local library had one of the graphic novels, but and I read them. I read that one like several
Is it-
times as a kid, but yeah, it was
Is
a
it
thing.
literally just
It
like
was a thing.
clips from the
And
show just edited together in graphic novel format?
basically, if I remember correctly, basically.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
Okay.
It,
Yeah,
Now
yeah,
I
it was
don't want
lazy,
them
but it
as
was
hard.
a thing that
I don't
existed.
want them as hard. Oh, come on.
I mean, I'd
They were a
still,
thing that existed,
I'd,
though.
I'd appreciate like a PDF or something of them so I could at least see what they're like.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, Nick, why does Yumi miss Mego when she has telekinesis?
That's fair.
I don't think she has telekinesis on
I
this.
think that
That's actually one of the things Chronicles and Evolution has in
they
common.
maybe
They just
lost
kind of
media.
She doesn't.
oh.
She lost what?
No, this is what Chronicles and Evolution have in common. They both kind of just forget that Yumi has telekinesis.
I mean, that literally means she never had telekinesis in Chronicles. Because we know if something doesn't exist in Chronicles, it never existed to begin with.
At least with telekinesis, I can
And an
kind of sort of.
evolution.
Well, oh gosh, yeah. Yumi's even weaker in Evolution.
Arguably the
See,
It's
no,
like her one power.
the thing I thought was gonna happen is like that he was gonna dodge it, like haha, I dodged your stupid fans, and then they were gonna boomerang back and hit him.
I mean,
That would have been cooler than him
I mean, it would have
jetpacking
been
away.
super cliche, but like it would
Would have been
I mean,
better
like,
than
it would have
him
been
dodging
so
and then
hilarious. It's
getting
"Haha,
like
you can't hit me. I'm too smart for
that would be great.
it would have been
Rips his jetpack
amazing. See, the Chronicles would be a lot better if it like used stuff from the actual original source material.
Maybe that's what you should do, Flower. You should remaster Chronicles so it's more
Oh.
faithful to the original.
That's a big project, man. I don't want to do that by
not
myself.
really. You're basically taking the plot and making it not shit.
That's impossible.
I don't know, make it like 5 books. Stretch out that.
I have
Ladder
thought
art.
about ways you can improve Chronicles in little ways,
Have
but
fun.
Put Flower through that pain.
I've been through enough pain reading through these and reading them out loud and listening to this.
Aw, does someone need a hug?
I'm okay. It's fine. Chronicles is we make fun of Chronicles, but it's not terrible. I mean,
it's like The Room. It's enjoyably bad.
Still disagree with you. It's not that bad. It's not. It's.
Okay,
I think
fine. It's
you
not
could
like
literally-
it's exceptionally mediocre. Yet it's
If you-
enjoyable because it's exceptionally mediocre.
I still think if you knew nothing about the original source material and you went and read these books, it wouldn't be as bad. A lot of the reason why it's bad is just because I know it could be better, but it's not. It could be better. I know what it.
exceptionally mediocre, and that's why it's good.
It's.
All right. We should probably get on to 18. We've been dragging on a little
Yeah.
while.
All right.
Here we go.
Chapter 18, Black Raven. At Katic Academy, Dido was watching the time. It was 26 minutes past midnight. The boss of the Men in Black opened the radio connection with the pilot of the fighter bomber in good time. "Madam," said a cold, masculine voice, "I will have more than completed the objective within 3 minutes and 50 seconds. Dido felt that this was the most difficult decision that she has ever had to make in her whole career. She was about ready to give the order to attack. She trembled, but she needed to stop the terrorists at any cost. But she felt that the words were now refusing to form in her mouth. "Get ready to destroy the factory," she managed to mutter at last. Grigory Notopoulos regained consciousness, but he found himself shoved up in a corner, tied up and gagged. His clothes reeked of smoke. The man was pale and had an expression typical of someone who had had a bad day. Jeremy smiled wide at Weasel. The boy had noticed that someone in the maintenance shaft was trying to figure out how to get inside, so he immediately opened the door, freeing the agent, and the man was now aiming his weapon at Grigory Notopoulos. An expression of satisfaction could be seen on his face. Jeremy felt relieved as well. He had traced the movements of his friends thanks to the laptops that were still connected to the supercomputer. In reality, though, it was Xana who deserved the thanks for picking up on his presence in the real world and regularly sending detailed files his way at each crucial moment. He had already described how Aelita and Eva had saved Professor Hertz and the other adults, and how Auric and Richard had taken down the majority of the soldiers, and finally how Yumi and Odd had confronted Mago. The boy turned towards Memory. "Why aren't we heading to the ground floor of the factory?" he said. "That's where all the others are, including Aelita." The woman gave a timid smile. Well, it's just that I don't know if I'm ready. I mean, I'm dying to see her, but she won't even remember me. She might think that I abandoned her. Maybe she hates me. Jeremy sighed. Why must adults always be so complicated? Alita doesn't know you, it's true, but she's done everything she can to find you, and now she probably feels all alone. You need to run and go see her, hug her, and get to know her. The boy was interrupted by the computer at his feet as it began to emit an insistent alarm. Jeremy saw Xana's face on the screen. He was still in the tower on Lyoko and had a somber expression. Did something happen? Jeremy asked him. Xana nodded his head. When you electrified the ground to stun Gregory, the internet connection to the factory was lost, and we've been isolated. Jeremy nodded. He'd known about that, but he'd figured it wasn't an urgent issue. It was more important for them to have taken out the Green Phoenix agent. The connection came back for a brief moment, the young man with blonde hair continued. Just long enough for me to intercept a communication from Dito. Actually, I think you were totally correct. About what? Said Jeremy with a worried tone of voice. About the government having a plan B in case they weren't able to stop the terrorists. I think that a plane is preparing to blow up the factory. What? Cried Jeremy. And when are they going to attack? If my calculations are correct, in 2 minutes, more or less. Unfortunately, we lost the internet again, and it would take hours for me to re-establish the connection. You need to find another way to get us in contact with Dito ASAP. Aelita was sitting at the center of the ground floor of the factory on the remains of what had once been the emerald-green nomadic tent of Hannibal Mago. The factory was full of activity. The men in black were tending to the injured, giving them first aid, handcuffing the rest of Mago's soldiers, and deploying men who were still in condition to work to do something useful. She was with the people she loved, Yumi, Ulrich, Eva, and Odd, who had earlier come back out from the scanners, now without his powers. None of them spoke a single word. They didn't feel like it was the right time yet to speak of their adventures. Now was the time to take in the battlefield, breathe deeply, and enjoy the feeling of their freedom and accomplishments. Everything was perfect, or rather, it would have been perfect if the last person they were missing was there, Jeremy. Aelita wanted to see him again, hold him in her arms, and tell him how grateful she was for everything that he did. Of course, Jeremy's style was kind of reserved and serious, almost secretive. But without him, the kids wouldn't have been able to materialize into the real world, and then what happened could have been terrible. When the doors to the elevator opened, Aelita turned towards it with a large smile. She remained frozen in place. Jeremy wasn't alone. With him was another agent from the Men in Black, Weasel, and a woman with red hair who... Jeremy told me that she was here, the young girl thought to herself with heartache. But up until now, I was reluctant to believe it. Aelita was about to step in their direction when Jeremy began to yell out, "A radio! Someone give me a radio, quick!" 43 seconds until we reach the objective, ma'am, sounded the static-riddled voice of the pilot in Dito's ears. Is authorization to open fire granted? On Dito's screen in front of her was a small black dial showing the countdown. 40, 39. I must release the bomb, continued the pilot, or else I'll need to make a large turn to return to the factory for another shot. Dito felt the pressure of the moment and knew that the same concern as hers was behind the pilot's stoic voice, but she was the one who had to support the weight of this decision. Okay, she murmured. Prepare yourself. Authorization for attack at X hour granted. Roger. At the same moment, Maggie's face appeared on her screen above the pilot's. The secretary seemed stressed, almost distraught. Ma'am! Stop Black Raven! They succeeded! The children succeeded! Dito couldn't believe her ears. There were only 21 seconds remaining before the attack. At only 18 seconds left, she reopened her connection with the pilot. As she spoke with him, her heart was beating so strongly that she couldn't even hear her own voice. Jeremy placed the radio on the ground, one the leader of the frogmen had given him. I did it, he spoke softly. Oric gave him an affectionate punch to the shoulder. Everything that had just happened once the boy had arrived back on scene had been a complete surprise to them, and they didn't understand an iota of what had just taken place. Mind explaining, genius? Jeremy gave a timid smile to his father and fixed his glasses on the bridge of his nose. Right, well, I managed to tell Dito to abort the attack. There was a plan that was about to bomb the factory. What? Blurted Odd, jumping to his feet. Plain. Lone Wolf completed his sentence for him. Operation Black Raven. I should have guessed that Dito would see herself obligated to put it in action. Jeremy raised a finger towards the ceiling. Do you hear that? That's the noise of the fighter bomber that was about to disintegrate all of us. Odd broke out into applause. Bravo! He cried. For Jeremy! Hip hip! Hooray! Aelita was watching the scene unfold from the corner of her eye. She felt it must be something important. However, she wasn't able to concentrate. The woman who had come out from the lift with Jeremy hadn't left her eyes. The cascade of red hair that went down to her shoulders and seemed to shine of its own light was the same color of her own in the real world when she was in her elf form on Lyoko. The woman had the same eyes as her, and the same fine lips that Alita saw when she looked in the mirror every morning. The nose, however, was different, as well as the shape of her face. The woman's face was softer and more friendly. Alita wanted to approach the woman, ask her if it was true, if it was really her. Yet, despite it all, she found herself unable to move or even to smile. It was as if an invisible storm was roaring inside of her, causing her to be frozen in place. A small beating knot that Alita felt in her chest knew perfectly well why she wasn't able to speak. This small, painful knot was telling her, "Don't get your hopes up. Don't kid yourself." She had already experienced it before. She had woken up on the supercomputer after a decade of sleep and found herself all alone. So all alone that she could no longer even remember having parents. She then discovered that her father was still alive, trapped on Lyoko in the form of a sphere of energy. But Alita was only able to spend a few minutes with him before he sacrificed himself to neutralize Xana back when the creature was still lacking human emotions. She later recovered the video in the Hermitage in which her father revealed to her that her mother was still alive and that Alita needed to find her. He had given her the necklace, and again. Things had been that way for such a long way. Struggling, believing, wishing, and then seeing all her hopes dashed, blown apart like a castle of cards destroyed by a gust of wind. She couldn't do it anymore. Alita had had enough of suffering. She was no longer able to take the first step. She was afraid, even if Jeremy had said that it was her. She felt her head turn. Around her, the world no longer existed. There was no factory, no men in black, no terrorists. Only herself and the woman with red hair. Very slowly, she saw her bring a hand to her neck, pull out a golden chain from under her shirt, and hold it between her fingers. At this same instant in time, Alita's necklace began to vibrate. Without completely understanding yet, without wanting to believe it yet, the young girl raised the necklace to her eyes. The A and the sailor's knot were shining intensely. The pink-haired woman nodded her head slowly. Alita realized that she couldn't see clearly. Her eyes were full of tears. The woman took a step forward. The small knot in Alita's chest melted like an ice cube under the sun, and the young girl opened her arms wide and began to run. Sobbing, she threw herself in the woman's arms. She felt great. She felt at home. This was her mother. Chapter 19. Code Down. Jeremy understood. Alita and her mother needed some time alone. They had 20 years to catch up on. Now that they'd found each other again, there was no more room for anyone else. It was as if an invisible firewall was isolating them from the rest of the world. The boy shrugged. He was dying to be able to talk to his friend, but he would have to wait. And, either way, he had plenty of other things on his plate. Jeremy began to debate with Lone Wolf and the leader of the Frogmen. They needed to find the necessary material for building a makeshift bridge that would reconnect the factory to the mainland. They needed to drain the river to find Mago. Dita was about to arrive with the rest of her agents, who during this time had apprehended the terrorists at the Hermitage. There were some seriously injured men among the men in black, as well as the Green Phoenix soldiers, and they needed to be taken to hospital as soon as possible, and there were other injured that could be taken care of immediately through handing out bandages and disinfectant. The children watched the scene from a distance. Besides Odd, the others were still the Yoka warriors, and with them were the creatures Xana had created. They felt out of place. What's more, the large black panther had seemed to become affectionate of Richard, and its gigantic head was resting against the young man's shoulder. Jeremy smiled. "What are you waiting for? We haven't finished yet, and your powers could be useful. Ulrich, Eva, you two can fly, so you help transport the steel cables to the riverbank to construct the new bridge. Yumi, to complete the bridge, we'll need some of the gangways the Green Phoenix installed here, and your fans are perfect for cutting the columns holding them up. Odd, we'll need medical supplies. You and Richard can take the Panther and find some faster. Search the factory from top to bottom." The children stood at attention and imitated a military salute before getting to work. Jeremy turned around to see the stupefied looks Lone Wolf and the leader of the Frogmen were giving. He smiled, somewhat embarrassed. "Well," he said, "you have your team, and I have mine." At 4 o'clock in the morning, a long stream of black limousines appeared at the end of the road and stopped in front of the new iron bridge. They were welcomed by Lone Wolf, Professor Hertz, and Jeremy. The boy was exhausted, but he knew that he couldn't get even a wink of sleep tonight. He needed to hold on a little longer. The first limousine's engine stopped, and the driver got out to open the passenger door. An energetic-looking adult woman with short blonde hair got out. In her hand she held a small suitcase, handcuffed to her wrist. Lone Wolf stood at attention, while Hertz stayed motionless. Dita nodded towards them, then approached Jeremy. "You must be the young Belpois," she exclaimed. "Thank you for warning me in time." The boy tried to reply, but the woman had already turned to her agent. "I think it's time to have a private meeting," she declared. "I want a detailed report on everything that happened tonight, and I've prepared some instructions." "Yes, ma'am." I also want to be part of this little conversation," Hertz cut in. "I'm not certain about what you have in mind, Dido." The boss of the Men in Black shot the professor a stony look. "Sorry, from now on, this mission is under the jurisdiction of the Men in Black, and you deserted them years ago." Lone Wolf gave a satisfied smile. "Come with me, ma'am. I prepared a room for our meeting." Jeremy tried to protest, but Dito and the secret agent had already crossed the temporary bridge. Hertz firmly gripped the boy's shoulder and gave him a sad smile. "Let it go," she said quietly. "Unfortunately, she's right. We've played our part, but now it's their turn." "What do you think Dito will decide to do?" The professor didn't respond, but deep worry glistened in her eyes. Jeremy hoped that Odd had followed his instructions carefully. Odd was furious. In the span of just 2 days, he had been forced to probe through the sewers in a wetsuit, take part in an assault on the Hermitage, hide in the mirror, transfer himself from there to Lyoko, and then attack the factory to vanquish the Green Phoenix once and for all. Everything was over now. They had won. He was a hero, and that means that he deserved applause and praise. And a little alone time with Eva, right? Wrong. Jeremy, who had done nothing but research on his computer this whole time, had suddenly started acting like the leader. "Odd, do this, do that. Odd, get into the air ducts and get to the room where Dito will meet with the adults." The air duct was very narrow and humid, and full of dust. The pieces of metal it was composed of were stuck together using rusty screws that scratched against his children. He could only see a meter ahead of him. Why the heck had he accepted? Well, in part, he felt flattered to have been chosen for this difficult mission. Aside from Jeremy, he was the only one who didn't have his Lyoko powers, and so he could slip in and out of places without being noticed. But even without his powers, Odd was incredibly agile, and he knew how to be silent when he needed to. But there was one other reason why he had been pushed to say yes, although nobody had ever said it aloud. The whole gang knew that Jeremy was the boss. Not because he was superior to them, but because he had great instincts and the ability to resolve truly exceptional problems. In time, Odd had learned to unconditionally trust his friend. If Jeremy says it's important, then it's really important. The vent formed a 90-degree angle in front of him. The boy peered around the corner, then crawled towards the light at the end. He froze as he heard the sound of chairs moving around on the floor and some small coughs. A moment later, he continued towards the small grate at the end of the conduit. He saw the factory director's office, sparsely furnished with 2 chairs either side of an enormous desk. Lone Wolf waited standing up, while Dita was seated. She used a small key to unlock the handcuffs attaching the suitcase to her wrist. Then she opened it and took out a pair of gloves. They were made of leather, and had a screen on the back of the right glove, with a series of colored cables connected from it to the fingertips. Odd had already seen this device. It was the memory snatching machine invented by Professor Hopper, the same machine that had been used in his father to permanently erase all trace of their memories of the supercomputer. "This operation was classified Code Red Tabula Rasa." Odd repeated Dito's words in his head so he could relay them to Jeremy. Tabula Rasa? What could that mean? "What priority?" said Lone Wolf, opening his eyes wide. "Absolute. That includes myself as well. Before coming here, I erased the memories of the agents in the Hermitage, the teachers, and all the students and parents who were at Caddick during the recent events. Total elimination of everything that has happened these past few days. Now it's the factory's turn. Once I've taken care of all the people here, I'll communicate the results to headquarters and use the machine on myself." "And this way, nobody will know anything about the supercomputer's existence anymore. Except the government bigwigs, of course," the agent concluded. "Exactly," Dito confirmed. Lone Wolf seemed perplexed. "And what will happen after that?" "A new squadron has begun to search for Mago. A team of scientists will then be chosen to study the supercomputer and find a way to adapt the first city. This way, the agency can use Hopper's weapon for its own means." "But we won't remember anything." Dito shrugged. "The operation was moved to higher circles. The bosses don't want to run any risk. There have already been enough problems." Lone Wolf stood and took the memory-snatching gloves his boss held out to him. Who do I start with?" he asked. "The terrorists first, then all our agents, and the children and their parents afterwards. And finally, you and I. I've already called in a cleanup team. They'll arrive in a few hours and escort us back home. Mago's men will end up in prison, and to us, absolutely nothing would have happened." "But the cleanup team?" "They'll be in charge of cleaning up the factory without knowing what went on here. The secret will be kept." Lone Wolf gave a weak smile. "Ma'am, given that I won't remember anything soon, I want to tell you that it's been a real honor participating in this operation under your command." "Thank you, Lone Wolf." The meeting ended. Odd retreated into the conduit. He couldn't believe his ears. The men in black were planning to erase everyone's memory, even theirs. He had to warn Jeremy immediately. "I can't leave my mother," Alita whined. She was beginning to get very annoyed with Jeremy. After all, after so many adventures and misadventures, she had finally been able to hold her in her arms again. She had a family once more, and she had kept the promise she made to her father. How dare the boy now come and ask her to... "Haven't you got your priorities straight?" he retorted. "If we wait a little longer, it'll be too late." "I said it's out of the question." Jeremy sighed. Alita saw the worry etched on her friend's face, but she wasn't about to let him do it. "Okay," he finally gave in, whispering. "Ask Memory, I mean Anthea, to come with us. But do it softly and quietly, so nobody sees you." The men in black were grouping up all the survivors of the Great Battle and escorting them to the cafeteria. At that moment, nobody was paying attention to the small group of kids. Jeremy approached Aelita's splendid unicorn. "We can't bring you with us," he murmured, "but we're going to need your help." He whispered some instructions into the unicorn's ear, and then repeated them to Oryx Manta Ray and Odd's Panther. The creatures galloped off to create chaos among the adults, who were obeying the men in black's orders without question. Taking advantage of the distraction, Anthea and the children ran to the lift and headed underground. Aelita was impatient, and all the others seemed nervous. They had heard Odd's hurried explanations about Dito's terrifying plan: erase all their memories, send scientists to take advantage of Hopper's supercomputer for military means. The only one who appeared calm was Jeremy, worried and a little sad, but calm. "Can you tell us exactly what you have in mind?" Aelita burst out. "Seriously, just trust me. I'll tell you when the moment arrives." The children went down to the second floor, the scanner room. Then Jeremy, Anthea, Richard, and Odd went back up a floor. Aelita observed the columns, somewhat dubious. "You'll see, Jeremy must have a plan," Yumi reassured her. A few moments later, they heard their friend's voice over the speakers around the room. "Sorry if I've been overly mysterious," Jeremy explained, "but we really don't have much time. I've just cut the cables to the lift, so the men in black can't reach us here. For now, at least. I don't know what you think about it, guys, but I haven't the slightest intention of forgetting about all our adventures." "Of course not," Richard's voice crackled. "It was the most beautiful and incredible thing that's ever happened to me." "Plus," continued Jeremy, "it's not right for Anthea to have to lose her memory. She and Aelita have just found each other again, and it's not right that the supercomputer falls into the hands of the men in black. Professor Hopper fought as hard as he could to ensure that wouldn't happen." "So, what do you propose we do?" asked Yumi. "Before anything else, you need to come back to the real world, and attacking each other until you lose all your life points doesn't seem like the best solution." "Darn right it's not!" Odd immediately exclaimed over the speakers. "It really hurts, believe me." Jeremy gave a little laugh. "You just need to enter the scanners, and you'll rematerialize in the real world. Aelita, you need to go in last, please." The children stayed still for a few seconds, then Oryx smiled. "It would be pretty useful for my father to forget everything," he said. "We may have made up over these past few days, but I don't feel comfortable with his secret agent role. If he can't remember all these adventures, with a little luck, he and I can start from scratch." "I'm thinking the same thing about my family," Odd added. "I really hope that my parents won't remember anything. If not, they'll choke me to death worrying about everything I've done or I'm doing." The scanners opened, and Oryx, Yumi, and Eva entered at the same time. Moments later, they came back out again, completely transformed. No more swords, fans, or exaggerated rock star makeup. They were just 3 children in jeans with eyes droopy from fatigue. "Aelita," Jeremy said over the speakers, "now it's your turn. Xana is waiting for you." The girl entered the scanner. When she opened her eyes again, Aelita found that she was in a tower on Lyoko. Its dark walls seemed to rattle around her, and by her side was the blonde-haired teen. Why did you bring me here?" Aelita murmured. In her ear, she heard Jeremy clear his throat. "Well, you see, I wanted to tell you, but I think I'm the one who should explain everything to her," Xana finished for him. "After all, it concerns me. Do you remember the code down?" Aelita nodded before replying. "It's my father's security program. If the code down is loaded in the supercomputer and I activate it from a tower like this one, Lyoko will auto-destruct definitely, and you—" "I'll die. It's impossible to create a backup copy of my new personality, so I'll simply cease to exist." Aelita looked at Xana. She didn't understand. This conversation was giving her chills. She just wanted to be happy. She just found her mother and was about to start a new life with her, so why are Xana and Jeremy intent on scaring her like this? "I made a promise. Do you remember?" she cried. "I swore that I would never activate the code down." Her words shook in the silence of the tower. The girl felt Xana's eyes stare at her fixedly. Now she began to understand, and with understanding rose a cry of rage so loud it made Jeremy feel nauseous. "Jeremy!" she yelled. "What does all this mean? Just what are you planning on doing?" The boy took several minutes before responding. "Xana and I have talked about it, and it's our only option. If the supercomputer falls into the hands of the men in black, they'll use it as a weapon. The first city will become what your father always loathed. We can't let that happen." "Jeremy is right," Xana confirmed. "He created me to stop humans from using the city as a weapon. I don't know how I managed to forget such an important task, but now I know that I must fulfill my purpose, save humanity, and I need you in order to do it." Aelita fell to her knees. She didn't want to listen to this. She didn't want to cry. She raised her gaze to meet Xana's. Her eyes were full of indignation. "Don't ask me to do such a thing. Not you, not Jeremy. I won't activate the code down. I won't destroy Lyoko, and I won't kill you either." "Aelita!" "I said no!" "Aelita, it's what your father would have wanted," said Jeremy. Xana smiled. He sacrificed himself to save humanity from Lyoko. Now it's my turn to make the same sacrifice. Alita didn't reply. A screen appeared in front of her, floating above the ground. Jeremy, Anthea, Richard, and Odd held on tight as they climbed down the maintenance tunnel to the second underground floor. They entered the room just as the scanner doors opened to bring Alita back to Earth. The girl's head was hanging low. She wasn't dressed as an elf, and her short hair was the same fire red color as her mother's. She raised a hand to gesture for Yumi to not come any closer, as the girl had approached to try and console her. She took long strides towards Jeremy. The boy was waiting with his hands in his pant pockets. He didn't know what to say. He felt guilty. He had brought Alita back to the real world an instant before Lyoko had imploded on itself, vanishing into nothing. The supercomputer was still turned on, but it no longer held any virtual worlds or even an operating system. Its immense calculating power had become useless, patiently awaiting something that would never come back. As the complex program was bringing Alita back to her physical body, Jeremy had seen the dying scream from the collapsing tower. Xana had motionlessly awaited his destiny, until he had suddenly raised his head. Jeremy was dumbfounded to see small, shining diamonds flow from his eyes. They were tears. Xana was crying. Jeremy opened his arms to welcome Alita home, and the girl threw her head over his shoulder, sobbing. "Do you know what he said before I left?" she whispered in a broken voice. "He said, 'Remember me.'" Jeremy gave a weak smile. "That's what you have to do. What we all have to do." The code down had destroyed Lyoko. Xana was no more. Now it was really the end. Dido put on the gloves of the memory-snatching machine. Her face resembled a stone mask. She and Jeremy were in the director's office at the factory, seated at opposite ends of the desk. On the table, the small suitcase was still open. A hallowing silence reigned throughout the factory. All the people involved in the terrible affair had lost their memories, and were staring blankly at the ceiling. Everyone except Dido, Jeremy, and his friends. The boy knew that the woman could force him to have his memories eliminated. She could also force it on Anthea, Richard, and the others. He had to change her mind. "So," said Dido, "you've shut down the supercomputer." "Not exactly," Jeremy replied. "All we've really done is erase all the data it contained. The computer is now nothing more than an empty, useless carcass." "Lyoko no longer exists." "Correct." "Nor did the first city in Xana." "Correct." Jeremy tried to read the woman's expression, noticed the slightest sign of rage or a sad smile, but there was nothing. Dido seemed completely unreadable. "And why did you do it?" she asked. "Why did I ask Alita to use the code down? It's simple. It's what Hopper would have wanted us to do. The professor spent his whole life fighting to keep the supercomputer out of your hands, as well as the terrorists. From his point of view, there's no difference between the two of you." "That's not—" Jeremy didn't let her continue. "Don't you understand, ma'am? You all want to use the supercomputer as a weapon. Mega wanted to conquer the world, and your agency probably intended to use the robot soldiers for legitimate means in official wars, but what difference is there? In both cases, innocent people end up dying, and Hopper would never have allowed that." Dido sighed, and this time Jeremy could see a shadow of fatigue on her face. "I imagine there's no way to undo what you've done." "Absolutely none. And if you don't trust me on that, you can send the code down to your scientists. The program is definitive and can't be undone." "So you've left me with no alternative." "More or less, but we're sure we've made the right decision." As he said these words, Jeremy gave the boss of the Men in Black a look of defiance. "And there's something else," he added. "None of us want to lose our memories. This is our great adventure, and Anthea, well, I think she's suffered enough these past decades, don't you? It's not right to take away her memories of her husband with the stroke of a pen, or the ones of when she finally held her daughter in her arms again." With a calm gesture, Dido replaced the memory-snatching gloves in the suitcase. "The cleanup team will arrive in a few minutes," she said softly. "They're agents trained to resolve complicated situations like this one. They've been ordered to erase my memory, given that I must be the only person to keep even the slightest memory of these events, and then they'll take care of everything else. They'll erase all trace of the terrorists and take them to prison. They'll accompany your parents to their respective homes, and you and your friends to the school. And finally, they'll close up the factory, blocking the access road with a wall, resolving the sewer flood and all the rest. It will be as if these past few days had never happened." Jeremy lowered his head. "They'll keep you under surveillance for some time," Dido continued. "The memory-snatching machine has some side effects. Confusion, dead stares, speaking nonsense, and other things of the sort." The boy looked at the woman, not understanding what she was getting at. "I know, but—" "So, try your best to act that way, and don't let yourselves be noticed," she interrupted. "When the cleanup team arrives, pretend you're all a little disoriented. Let them guide you to caddy like sheep, and try not to stand out among the adults. And, of course, don't get involved in any more dodging dealings. I won't remember your faces, so I can't help you even if I want to, okay?" Jeremy couldn't believe his ears. When he'd come into the office, he hadn't had any hope of convincing Dido. "Why are you doing all this?" he asked the woman. "To be honest, I don't at all like what's about to happen. Tonight I was forced to make the most difficult decision of my life, and I realized that it had been the wrong decision. When everything turned out well thanks to you and your friends, I let out a sigh of relief, to then realize that it was for nothing. Of course, we're not the Green Phoenix, but either way you're right. In the end, the ends we would use the supercomputer for wouldn't be all that different to theirs. As she spoke this last sentence, Dido offered him her hand. Consider it a gift from a friend, all right? Jeremy shook the hand with enthusiasm. All right, he said, and to celebrate our friendship, I have one last favor to ask of you. The cleanup team arrived at around 7 o'clock in the morning in a large black truck. They wore plastic suits, gloves, and shoe covers, like forensic scientists. Masks covered their noses and mouths, and large reflective glasses hid the rest of their faces. They didn't speak, not even to each other. Jeremy and the other kids sat in a corner, trying to look a little stunned. Now and then, Odd couldn't help himself, and burst out laughing. That may have been precisely what made their little game of pretend look so convincing. Jeremy stared at Dido as one of the agents took the memory-snatching machine and used it on her. For several minutes, the small digital screen on the back of the gloves filled with fast-scrolling text, while the woman bent backwards as if a strong electrical charge was rushing through her body. Her final glance was at Jeremy, and the boy swore he could see a smile on her lips. After that, Dido ended up like the others, somewhat disoriented and confused. They led her into a van with Lone Wolf, Weasel, Ferret, and the rest of the men in black. The terrorists were handcuffed and piled into a truck to be brought to the police station. Then it was the children's parents' turn, who boarded a helicopter to be taken to their respective homes. Professor Hertz, Richard, and Thea, Jeremy, and all the others got into the minibus that took them to Caddick. The cleanup agents were rather scary. They all looked the same and were very quiet, but they knew how to do their job. In a short amount of time, they had disposed of Mago's nomadic tent and the terrorist gunpowder. They even worked on the factory bridge to leave it looking exactly as it had before the explosion, in such a way that the inhabitants of this part of Paris wouldn't notice the difference. Jeremy thought that, in a few days, this place would be identical to as it had been for so many years. All trace of their adventures was destined to be completely erased. And maybe that was for the best. Finally, one of the agents started the minibus and set off towards Caddick. Jeremy turned to take one last look at the factory on the small island, with its roof flooded with sunlight and the mysterious air about it that had always fascinated him. The river water flowed peacefully, and on the other side of the river he could see the same traffic as always, full of beeping cars and motorbikes ducking in and out dangerously between other vehicles. Jeremy had all his friends by his side. Everything was perfect.
Everybody, F in the chat for Xana.
Yep.
Xana!
Oh, he's...
No coffin dance meme this time.
Can't believe it. He's gone!
Imagine the coffin dance meme
Hold on.
after the scene.
Hold on.
There's the Oz. Where's the Oz coffin dance?
Hold on.
Can we pull that up? Can we pull up the
Please,
Oz
please.
coffin dance? You know what I mean.
Ooh.
You mean this flower?
It can't be, but it
I don't
is.
see it. Wait, it would be on stream. No, it's not on stream.
Lita, we've done
Yeah,
it. Xana's been destroyed. I'll bring you home now.
Ah, there it is.
Said it, but I don't see it.
What do you mean you don't see it? It's on the Twitch, not Discord stream, flower. On the Twitch, not the Discord stream.
Oh.
Yeah, I didn't change it over because we still have to watch
The epilogue.
That's fair.
Yes.
Oh boy. Well, at least our suffering finally comes to an end.
Okay, so Ava keeps her memories. What happens to Ava? I mean, is this all resolved in the epilogue?
Yeah,
Okay.
for the most part. If it's not resolved in the epilogue, then you can gripe. But yeah. So that's that. Is there anything else we need to say before the epilogue?
Let's just get to the epilogue and then we can talk.
Yeah.
Mute
Alright,
up.
here we go.
Epilogue. A party with a surprise. It was 10 in the morning on Sunday, and the airport in this region of Paris was filled with people. There were tired tourists lugging around big suitcases behind them, and businessmen moving with ease and determination past the counters, policemen and departure gates. There were pilots and flight attendants in their impeccable uniforms with small, professional-looking wheeled suitcases, as well as throngs of students and chauffeurs holding up small signs with all sorts of names written on them to catch the attention of a client arriving from who knows where. I was also holding up a small sign, one that read, "Eva Skinner." By his side were Principal Delmas and Jim Morales, the physical education teacher. Suddenly, Jim extended an arm towards the screens that indicated the arrivals and departures of the flights. "There it is!" he exclaimed. "The flight from San Francisco just landed." Odd couldn't contain his joy. It had been more than 20 days since he had last seen Eva, and it had felt like a real eternity. Dido had erased the memories of the principal, teachers, and all the students of Caddick. They had woken up with headaches and a bit of confusion after what seemed to them to have been a long dream. The men in black had done a good job. They had left the school like new, and the mess caused by the Green Phoenix had all simply vanished. The following day, 2 agents from Interpol came to the principal's office. Eva's parents had gone to the police after she had run away. For over a month now, the young girl's face had been among the thousands of photos of missing persons at police stations around the world. The Interpol agents calmed the principal down, promising him that no complaints would be filed against him. Complaints, of course, that the principal would not be able to answer, given that he didn't even remember that a student named Eva Skinner was registered at Caddick. This was the promise that Jeremy had obtained from Dido before the woman wiped everyone's memories, and she had kept her word. Someone had spoken with Mr. Skinner, who was a renowned lawyer, and convinced him to withdraw his complaint. At first, Mr. Skinner was furious and called Principal Delmas on the phone in a fit of rage, but then he chose to accept the Men in Black's offer, a scholarship for Eva to attend Caddick Academy, paid in full by the government. Mr. Skinner thought it was a rather good idea ultimately. Eva seemed so happy when he finally saw her again. "I'm still not very convinced about all this," spouted Principal Delmas. "This Skinner seems like a very aggressive man to me. His phone call woke me up at 3 in the morning, and he was shouting at the top of his lungs." Odd turned and gave a smile that crossed his face from ear to ear. "Don't worry, sir. Everything's already been arranged, right? The police closed the investigation, and Eva's parents are happy that she's registered at Caddick. They said European schools are much more chic." Odd then interrupted himself and began to jump on the spot. Look! There she is!" The sliding doors that led to the baggage claim opened up, and the passengers from the San Francisco flight started to pass by them. Eva was pulling a small wheeled suitcase and was dressed in a light pink jacket that made her seem several years older. When she saw Odd, she waved her hand and ran towards him with her suitcase bouncing behind her. "I'm so glad to see you!" she exclaimed in English while hugging him tight. Me too," muttered Odd in French. "Whatever it is you said." "Idiot! I knew you understood me just fine." Eva gave him a kiss on the cheek, took him by the hand, then gave a small nod to Jim and Principal Delmas. "Sir, my father gave me a letter for you to apologize for having been so rude. I'm sure you understand that with me having been missing for such a long time, my parents began to feel really desperate." Odd stopped listening to the conversation and focused on Eva's delicate fingers interlaced with his own. All throughout his career of breaking hearts, the boy had managed to get a good number of girlfriends, but in general, it didn't take a long time before he would get bored. However, during all these days that he'd spent far from Eva, he hadn't stopped thinking about her for a second, and he felt like his chest was about to explode with joy. Eva was here, and she was here to stay. "You know what?" he whispered in her ear. "We already prepared your room in the dorms. It's the same one that Aelita once had now that she's living at the Hermitage with her mum." He gave a small laugh before continuing. "At first, it's a bit of a mess, because we need to go to bed early and respect a ton of rules. I know all the ways around them." "What's that?" the gym teacher burst out. "You better watch it, kid, or you'll end up in detention for so long you won't get out until your hair goes gray." Eva laughed, and Odd followed her. Then Jim and Principal Delmas also broke out in laughter. Ulrich knocked timidly on the door to Professor Hertz's office with the back of his hand. "Enter," a masculine voice answered him from inside. The boy entered. The office was in its usual organized disarray with machines, books, beakers, and microscopes placed all over the room, the floor included. Nearby, the main table was a smaller one, a bit smaller, on which sat a laptop and a pile of neatly ordered papers. Behind the screen was Richard, who was working in total concentration. He was sitting on an unsteady pile of magazines and wearing thin-framed glasses that gave him a different air than usual, more adult-like and more serious. Upon seeing Ulrich, he stood and moved away from the computer. "Ah, it's you. Good. I wanted to speak with you, actually." He motioned to invite him to sit, but the boy couldn't tell where, so he gathered several volumes of encyclopedias from the floor and piled them up so that he could sit on top. Ulrich stumbled. He didn't know where to start, but Richard cut to the chase and began to talk at full speed. "I corrected your last science test, and I must say that things aren't going well. On the second question, you made a small mistake that I almost had to mark off, but then on the third, Oh no, Richard wanted to talk about school. Oric waved his hands to stop him. Whoa. I know that you're Hertz's assistant now and that you're taking your new job very seriously, but it's Sunday. The boy's interruption caught him by surprise, and Richard stopped to look at his watch. True, it is Sunday, he muttered. I forgot. This is all still new to me, and juggling work with university isn't an easy thing. Oric felt himself smile. Professor Hertz hadn't forgotten a thing of what had happened recently, but she discovered a certain affinity for Richard, and several days after the battle for the factory, she offered him a job as her assistant. At first, he was a bit nervous, but he finally accepted. Oric knew that he felt right at ease at Caddick, and that in time he would make a great teacher. I came here as your friend, not your student, said the boy. I wanted to invite you to dinner. To dinner? You? But... Oric gave a small laugh. It's Anthea who told me to come. She and Alita want to organize a dinner this evening to celebrate. Richard nodded his head. A party? Tonight? Perfect. I'll bring the wine, okay? And, also some drinks for you guys. What time is it? At 8 o'clock at the Hermitage, exclaimed Oric as he left through the door. Hello, it's Yumi. Hello, Yumi, responded the calm voice of Anthea from the other side of the line. How are you? All right. Can I speak with Alita, please? I'm sorry, dear, but she's taking a short nap. She's very tired. Yumi glanced at the clock by her bedside. It was 6 o'clock in the afternoon. She was asleep at this hour? Yumi considered for a moment telling Alita's mother about her problem, but realized that she couldn't. That would be too embarrassing. The young girl thanked Anthea and bade her goodbye. Then she stayed in place, playing with the wireless phone. There were only 2 more hours to go until the dinner, and she couldn't speak to Alita. Now that she thought about it, she and Jeremy hadn't been around all weekend. Yumi hadn't managed to find them anywhere, and she didn't know how to ask for help. Eva, maybe? Yeah, right. Yumi rejected this idea immediately. She had just returned to Caddick this morning, and Odd had her glued to him from the first instant. What's more, she was a major fashion victim, and instead of helping her, Eva would have broken out in laughter. The truth was that Yumi didn't have the slightest idea how to dress. Oric would come looking for her at 7:45 to go to the party. For Yumi, this would be a really special occasion. After the battle against the terrorists, she and Oric hadn't yet had the occasion to talk about their feelings for each other. Yumi felt as if something about her had changed, something that was becoming stronger. In the minibus that had brought them to Caddick, leaving the abandoned factory forever behind them, the boy had sat by her side and held her hand. He had become more sure of himself, more bold. What should she wear? She wanted Oric to realize that she had made herself pretty for their get-together. Maybe she needed to put on some makeup, but she didn't even know where to start. At that moment, she heard a knocking at her door, and her mother entered immediately afterward, with bare feet and a cup of steaming hot tea in her hand. The tea smelled like jasmine, Yumi's favorite. Is everything all right? Yukiko asked her. Yumi gave her a smile. Her parents didn't remember anything that had happened over these past few days, but something had stayed with them, like a sort of well of emotions. The family had become more united, and there was more harmony at home. Yumi and Hiroki, her younger brother, had stopped fighting, and her mother seemed to be much more sympathetic. Yumi had spoken with Oric and the others, and they all had had the same impression. The memory-snatching device had erased all the bad things and left the good. Well, sighed the young girl, I don't know how to dress elegantly for tonight. I mean, I'd look good in the kimono from that my aunt gave me for Christmas, but I don't want to look... Akiko kneeled on the floor close to her and placed a hand on her shoulder, interrupting her. It's for Ulrich, right? Yes. Can I ask you how you two met? Yumi began to tell her. She told her mother about the afternoon in the gymnasium when she and Ulrich had faced each other in a martial arts bout and how she ended up battling him. Akiko laughed. So, this boy fell in love with you because he realized how you're good at what you do. If you ask me, you don't need an elegant kimono to get his attention. What really interests him is how you are on the inside. But if you want, I can give you a hand with your hair. We'll keep it Yumi style, but give it a more special touch. Yumi smiled. She and Akiko stood and hugged. The guests arrived around 8 o'clock. First, Eva, Richard, and Odd, who was carrying his little dog Kiwi in his arms, then Oric and Yumi. Jeremy went to open the door for them and realized that Oric was a bit grumpy. What happened? He asked as he passed by the group. Well, nothing really. His friend spoke softly. Just that I didn't notice Yumi's beautiful new hairpins that she had in her hair, and she gave me a good punch. Jeremy laughed. Yumi and Oric, always the same. In the middle of the Hermitage's living room was a long table with a charming tablecloth and a bunch of delicious food. Odd stared at it with the eyes of a hungry wolf. It won't be easy to do justice to all of this food, he exclaimed. Eva replied with a nudge. But if you make it to my pork, you'll swallow every last bit. Aelita descended down the stairs wearing a sweater and an elegant pink skirt. She still had sleepy eyes, but she was smiling and seemed to be doing extremely well, radiant with happiness. Finally, Yumi greeted her. I was looking for you everywhere this afternoon, you know what? And I was looking for you, Jeremy, added Odd. Mind telling us what you two were up to all weekend? The boy responded with a mysterious smile and pulled out a chair for Aelita so that she could sit by his side. It was quite a perfect dinner. Anthea came out from the kitchen glowing with joy. I have to admit that, despite the fact that I've recovered my memory, my wonderful recipes never returned to me. So, I ordered everything from an amazing restaurant nearby. I hope you all like it. The children applauded. Indeed, everything was delicious. They stuffed themselves, and Richard and Odd competed to see who could eat the most slices of roast beef. The competition ended in wild cheers, and the indisputable victory went to Odd for having eaten 9 slices against 7. Before moving on to dessert, the children decided to take a break and remain seated at the table, talking. A bit later, as expected, the conversation centered on their adventures, particularly on their battle against Mago and the Code Down. What I regret the most, Oryx said, is that Xana isn't here with us. I mean, at first I didn't like him at all with his air of superiority and all that. Plus, he had been our enemy for a long time. But in the end, I realized that he had really changed, and he proved to us that he was a good person. I think the same thing, continued Odd. When we were all running along the bridge to Lyoko, and I was on my super cool panther, Xana approached me and gave me some advice for the battle ahead. And you won't believe it, but he even laughed, even though Lyoko was falling to pieces then, because Grigory had just shut down the supercomputer. Yeah, confirmed Yumi. I thought that after the Code Down I would miss Lyoko a lot, because all of these adventures that we went on, and yet Lyoko doesn't matter to me in the least. What I really miss is our Lord, Peter Duncan. At that moment, Jeremy stood and rang his fork against a glass to call for silence. He and Aelita had been waiting for this moment all evening, and the time had finally arrived to share their news with everyone. Tell me something, exclaimed the boy. Haven't you been wondering what the codes that we found in Richard's palm computer contained? In the living room of the Hermitage, a large uproar took over. Everyone began to talk at the same time. A mischievous smile grew on Jeremy's face, and he let Anthea explain the first part of the mystery. Hannibal Mago ordered me to study them, and while analyzing them, I understood that it was a program divided into 2 parts. The first was an activation code, and the second was completely incomprehensible. It was clear to me that this program's purpose was to activate something, but I had no clue as to what. Jeremy continued. Later on, Anthea and I worked together on deciphering the codes, and I realized that she was completely right. The last part of the codes didn't seem to make any sense, as if it was only a ton of random letters and numbers. So I told myself that maybe it was just that. It seemed like one very, very, very long password. A password? Asked Richard. But why? To protect what? I don't know if you remember this one scene that we saw in the mirror, Aelita intervened this time, but in it, my father had problems making a backup copy and needed more space to stock an excessive quantity of information, an amount of space that no hard drive was capable of supplying him. Yumi jumped to her feet. Of course, she exclaimed. And so you told him that you would help him and that he could count on you. And in the next scene you were lying down on the couch and had a fever, and then the men in black arrived. Exactly, said Aelita. Daddy needed more space, so he and I decided to use my brain. The room was overtaken by absolute silence. Jeremy smiled. Remember the memory snatching device? Well, Hopper used it to pour the supreme and superior will of Peter Duncan into Aelita's mind. He practically copied all of his essence into Aelita's brain, and to avoid having this information stolen by anyone, he protected it with a password that he then sent to Richard. That's why I was burning up with a fever in the mirror, explained Aelita, and also why I spent all afternoon sleeping today. I left yesterday with Jeremy in secret, and we returned to the old factory, to summon him, all of his might, his glory and his power, and even his followers. It was incredible news. Jeremy observed the bewildered faces of his friends. He had also had trouble believing that such a thing were possible, to be able to reconstruct Peter, but then he realized he should not doubt his perfection. That was the reason why Aelita had always suffered from sudden spells of amnesia. Her brain was literally crammed full of millions and millions of pieces of scripture, just like an armoire stuffed so full that it was impossible to close all the way. When Jeremy had realized that Richard's codes were in reality a password, he imagined that Hopper must have prepared a security system to protect the men in black from Duncan, but he hadn't the slightest idea that the professor had in reality imported every last bit of him, enclosing and locking it away in Aelita. Everything went so fast after that, with the battle and all the rest, that he hadn't gotten back to this puzzle until... Are you sure you did it right? Asked Ulrich. Ulrich, don't utter such blasphemy, Odd reproached him. Our Lord and Savior Peter Duncan has the ultimate will. He would have ensured his recreation was flawless beyond doubt. Peter would say that's true, and the final words that he spoke to Aelita before his disappearance gave me an ingenious idea. He said, "Remember me." Peter knew all about the codes, and he sensed the truth. He had found the solution to this mystery through his might. Remember me. Besides having all of his supreme will in her memory, Alita was also Peter Duncan's most devout follower. You could say that no one knew better than her, especially with this new divine form. At this moment, Alita smiled and Jeremy stopped for a second to look at her lovingly before continuing. When we recreated Peter Duncan, we only needed to take advantage of all the information in the rest of her brain to... The boy was on the point of launching himself into a scientific expose of the highest level, but Alita motioned for him to stop. I think that it would be easier to show them directly, don't you think? Come with me to the basement, to my father's secret room. We have another guest on the way to eat dessert with us. He's bald and has been gracious and patient for a very, very long time. He must be about to come and induct us into his glorious cult.
Okay, Flower. So obviously, this is a super modified version of the actual epilogue.
No.
But I
Chronicles
love
is
it.
the best book now. I love it. It's canon. It's canon. Oh yeah.
Now, if you'll
now
excuse me, I need to go to a jewelry store.
Meme, but...
Now, if you two will excuse me, I need to go to a jewelry store.
Okay. I know why. Oh.
That was beautiful, Flower.
If only Cam was here. If only Cam
Oh
was
my
here
God.
to see this.
Oh my god.
To think, we have finally come full circle.
That was great.
This
Right?
entire thing started because we were trying to
He
find an
would've
Ulrich
quit. He
VA,
would have quit.
and we have come full circle with this meme. There is no point beyond this. That
Yep.
anything beyond this is
Yes.
just past the circle.
Yes.
So, I have a question. Do you want me to... I meant to record a separate
Exactly.
take of the original
We've
actual
done it.
ending.
I would like the. I'm guessing aside from some of the very specific stuff like Ulrich don't utter such blasphemy.
I like
our Lord
this
and Savior
version.
Peter Duncan has the ultimate. Aside from certain parts like that, I'm pretty sure most of this is you just switched Xana out with Peter Duncan.
That's not entirely true. I had to do a bit more work to make it feel a little more natural. But this is mostly pretty close to how it. So you want me to read the original 4 pages because I don't have it recorded? I didn't get to it. Or do you want me to just tell you how it was originally ended?
We can just drop it in Catic Live later
That's
or something.
Oh, sure. But I'll at least tell you because it's not just Xana. So in the original ending, it turns out the reason why Alita was having all those memories, that information dump that was in her head, was literally the backup of Lyoko in the first city. And Jeremy figured this out, and so he and Alita and Anthea all worked together to recreate Lyoko. And then they're like, well, Alita super knew Xana pretty well, so we just use her knowledge of Xana to recreate Xana as well. That's literally what they do.
So-
Yes, it is Xana.
So using the Hermitage scanner.
Yeah, I guess they had to repair that too.
But then so they just so the supercomputer was on and being researched by the Men in Black, or because they basically made the supercomputer a brick, the Men in Black just don't care and they're not researching it.
Yeah, originally what I thought had happened is the code down didn't just affect the software, it affected the hardware too, so it actually fried the circuits. So they basically just bricked the supercomputer, but then so then they're like, oh, I guess it's just a hunk of junk. And then they leave, but I guess that's not what happened. Cuz they managed to recreate Lyoko, the first city, and Xana, which I still think is kind of a cop-out ending. I didn't like that ending either. I'm like, I think that should have been just left destroyed. Honestly.
Yeah.
No, Xana, I think the book ultimately was coming to Xana gets devirtualized.
That's why when I first
which I would have been
posited,
fine with that, but then it's
Can
like,
I
oh
just-
no, Xana's back. Oh, Lyoko and the first city's back. Oh, so that entire thing just doesn't matter narratively.
Pretty much. Nothing matters. That's okay. Because Peter has returned.
Wait, hold on.
that's
So-
a much better ending. I was actually a little upset. I was worried that when I had to leave, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna miss out on your reaction to
Oh, so
the
brilliant.
ending.
I've never, wow, 13 minutes or 15 minutes of just the pictures. That's a lot of pictures.
Ah.
Yeah, I mean, I scroll through like the books because I wanted to capture the pictures on the chapter
The
intros
Chat
too.
Noir.
The Black Cat by Edgar Allan Poe.
Wait,
Without
is that
danger.
so that's the Hermitage in
Yes.
hmm.
In Chronicles. I mean, it's not that bad.
I guess.
It could be worse.
I mean, we only technically see the front and the side of and the left-hand side of the Hermitage. And even then we're only seeing the basement level of it. Or the basement walkout level of it. I don't know. I guess I can't really complain about how the Hermitage looks.
It does look
'Cause
kind of big
It's
for a
era
house.
specific. I think they did match the era at least.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's still kind of big for a house that was literally only meant to hold like Franz and his daughter. That was the only two people living there. Maybe
I mean,
he
the
just
original
bought...
Hermitage is 3 stories. We never see where the second stairwell is, but that's semantics. You don't need a stairwell to get up to the 3rd story of a house. I mean, yeah, but keep in mind, Dark Xana, the era the Hermitage would have been built, maybe it wouldn't. I mean, the Hermitage is a fairly large house, so it was probably owned by someone with a fair bit of money, and then it probably got transferred over, like, at least in the canon we have here, it made its way through some government organizations and eventually ended up as being the place where Hopper was in hiding. So I don't know. I like how they just have a picture of the top of the sewer ladder.
Yep.
But no, yeah, that was brilliant. I was not expecting that. I'm like, oh, it's gonna say. I was about to say, oh yeah, something about Xana, and then oh, it's Peter Duncan.
He is in Chronicles. This
Neither
is the true
was
ending.
I prefer this ending. Honestly, this makes Chronicles good. So, like, all of it is worth it now. I would reread all of these books just to get to this ending.
Same. Well, no, I don't know. I'd probably just skip all of the book and get to the ending. Why suffer through the books when you can just bask in the glory that is our Lord and Savior, Peter Duncan? Also, Flower, you needed so when Odd was like,
that's also fair.
When Odd questions Ulrich's blasphemy, Ulrich should have retorted that as Peter Duncan's right-hand man, I would never stoop to such a level of blasphemy.
It's a good idea. I was just hesitant to like mess with the story too much because I didn't want to break the formatting.
That's fair.
Like I was trying pretty hard to like make it natural, but also not change it to the point where it's like
That's
completely
fair.
Rewritten. I was already struggling to try and get the format to match, and I didn't quite succeed. The font's not quite right, but it's close enough. No, I had a hard time reading that without laughing. You can even hear it sometimes.
No, yeah, there were a few times I noticed.
I was just trying.
I was too busy loving it to to notice.
The normal book text got me through it.
I was muted, but I was laughing so hard.
I just didn't see it coming. I knew we said something about doing it as a joke, but I never So this is why it took you so long to record them last night.
No, I actually had the PDF up ready but like on Friday, I think I had
Okay.
made that.
It was
I
just
just
okay. It was just a voice. You don't want to tie your voice
yeah
out.
yeah.
That's fair.
But I'm like, I
Gregory's
needed
Rottweilers.
that motivated me to get it finished on like before I went to bed. So, because if I don't do it, then
Wait,
it
so
won't
this is
happen.
supposed to be a
Mhm.
camera memory card, yet it's a floppy disk?
That happens. There are cameras that are like that. Not
Yeah.
modern cameras, but
Probably like a super advanced floppy disk.
or like Franz's memory compression is just really impressive. It can fit on a 3.25-inch floppy disk.
Brilliant. I no, those are mini floppy disks.
I gotta say, the Caddick Academy enrollment form, you actually see a glimpse of Richard, like young Richard from when he was still a student
Yeah,
at
that
Caddick.
picture that we just went past.
Yep.
Grigory Nictopoulos' passport.
Yeah,
Wow.
2009-2010 is when this was written. This was while Evolution was still called Code Lyoko Reloaded, and it was still in concept phase.
Yep.
Maybe
It's-
evolution is
it's-
so bad because they looked at this and they're like, we couldn't possibly do this bad, and then they just went ahead with what they had at that point. and funny enough, they didn't do this bad.
Yeah. So in a way, they succeeded.
Radio frequency interceptor. Semi-automatic pistol. Portable DVRs. Digital voice recorders.
Since they were planning to make this with Reloaded already plans to be a thing, did they just decide, alright, did they just tell the writer, okay, do whatever you want, as long as it doesn't conflict with what we're doing, it's all good?
I mean,
that's it?
I mean, if like the entire backstory portion of Chronicles wasn't just straight up butchered, what season 1 through 4
Yeah.
butchered, you could easily just
Yeah.
you could just plop this into the middle of you could sort of
Hold
plop
on.
this into in between season 1 through 4 and Evolution. If you
No.
just have Anthea
That
kidnapped
still
again,
doesn't
no,
work.
if you just have Anthea kidnapped again, and a few other
I've made
things.
this joke.
Wow,
I've made this
no.
joke before that you could put Chronicles in between the original and Evolution, and it would still kind of work.
You have
Sort
to
of.
tweak a few things.
It'd be
No, this would have
weird.
been after No, it would be Chronicles would be after Evolution, but it would be one heck of a lore tangle. I do like the memory gloves. I actually think they're neat, especially in design.
Mhm.
I like how they have almost a retro feel to them.
An address and
In a nightmare. Yep.
monster, right? Yumi's house.
It's the Brussels
Yumi,
sprouts.
there's a monster here. He attacked mom and dad.
Yeah, I wish Hiroki was characterized a little better.
Did Hiroki get
And-
his memory wiped?
Yeah, I think so.
I think it's just the
Nah,
Warriors.
Hiroki is completely out of the
Richard,
story, and he's
And
just
Hertz.
at
And
Hertz
Hertz.
didn't get
playing
hers
video
wiped
games
either.
and Anthea.
the whole time.
Anthea, Richard, and Hertz, and then the rest, and then all the Warriors. So does this mean William got memory wiped?
Yeah,
He
probably.
doesn't remember getting possessed by Xana. Yay! No more PTSD.
Oh, that is a good
PTSD
question
always finds a way, bro.
with Chronicles. Like, what did happen with William when he got possessed that one time? Did he fall unconscious, then drag his unconscious body to the nurse and just play it off like he fainted or something?
Probably.
Or
They
Yeah,
probably
what happened?
dragged him to his room and sat
Yeah,
someone
well,
in his
you know.
room to make sure he didn't remember anything. PTSD makes
No,
characters
wait.
more
I just
interesting.
realized.
That's debatable.
That's really dark too.
Uh,
They're not an interesting character if they
God.
don't have PTSD.
So is Aelita
Well,
the
yeah,
only interesting character?
trauma builds character, don't you know?
I mean, I find it so. So what was the extra gift for from Dito? Was it just Ava?
I think
Like,
so.
yo.
No, the gift was not wiping their memories.
Yeah.
Well, okay, yeah, but then Jeremy asked her to do one more favor.
Yeah, that was to get Eva to Caddick.
Okay.
It helps soothe over the whole she kind of just vanished mysteriously. Like technically she ran away.
I like how like we finally resolve like the plot thread of Ava just running away it's like it has not come up at all in the course of these 4 books, but the very last second of the entire story, it's just like, oh yeah, no, like everyone was freaking the fuck out that Ava was missing.
Well, remember, she was literally like from the other side of the world. They weren't looking to France to find her. But I think it is very strange. Like, she passes out at her favorite concert and then she disappears. Like, it's possible they would have gotten from the lady. Like, she climbed down in her, like, nightgown or, like, whatever it's called, the medical sheet thing.
Yeah.
And then, like, attacked this lady and stole her clothes. And then, like, I bet you the lady remembers that. Does the police officer remember this lady, like, knocking her out? Knocking him out?
The pain at
No.
home, bro. I like some of these maps, and the maps are like such a wide range of different differentiating opinions on what Caddick and whatnot look like. I still find the most interesting choice usually is whenever the question of where the Hermitage comes up in like canon, with the exception of the actual seasons 1 through 4, everyone's just like, oh yeah, it's like right next to Caddick. Because in Chronicles you can see Caddick from the Hermitage, even though in actual canon you can't. And then obviously evolution, it just doesn't. What's the Hermitage?
It's because the original show doesn't do very good at showing off its spatial awareness of like where things are in relation to each other. It just kind of gets hand waved. It's really how far away something is from something else depends on drama. How dramatic would it be if this thing was much further than it really was?
Aelita's just such a Chad, biking from like somewhere sort of out of the city all the way to the factory, like such a Chad.
It's a chance that the bus was really there more to like carry all their luggage than it was to like because
I mean they're
super
still
far away.
sort of out of the city. They're not
sort of,
but yeah, there's plenty of times where distance is just a measure of creating suspense.
Oh, here we go. These images. This book 4 set of images is
her
just
hair
sort of
is pink.
Oh, that's her Lyoko
Here.
form. That's her Lyoko form.
Yeah, I guess. Let's see.
Wait, does that use season 4, Yumi? What? What?
Yeah, that is season. That's season 4
What?
Ulrich. No, it's season 4
That's
Ulrich
season
too.
4, Yumi, isn't it?
And Ulrich.
Yeah, and Ulrich.
And Ulrich.
What the? I'm mad. I'm mad.
But Odd and Aelita, they remain.
Make
But that would mean Ulrich has 2
Chronicles?
sabers.
Watch Oh, we don't even get to see Jeremy. Music power? Question mark. Research
Damn.
by the FBI. Contact Dito. Unaccessible. Sewer access. Thermostat. Some of these images are the half paging is wrong. Like this would need to be a page over, and then I'm guessing the completionary half of this page is gonna show.
I mean, I know those borders are pretty close when I adjusted my cutting off for the.
No, yeah, but this is the right half of
Even-
of that page on the last screen, which
yeah.
is Adobe Acrobat being stupid. It's not your
It
fault.
might just be like this is. I feel like you're supposed to look at this like not from a standard book perspective, which is why it's a little funky to look at now.
No, you are supposed to look at
Yeah.
these from a standard book perspective. This is the right half of this.
Do they, like,
pair
fold
of
out?
pages. This is the right half of the pair of pages. You can see the crease line from what they used to scan it, or the bend line on the page, because the image is warped on this whole plane. See, you see this little highlight spot? From where
I see
page
the
bends?
highlight spot.
And then there's
Yeah, like I said, I just think those images are a little too messy. It's just all over the place. There's so much.
Council of War.
Whoa.
I still it's so
They are-
when Odd described Ava like a musical sorceress. I'm like, I just can't. I thought of immediately the song and dance scene from Hocus Pocus. I put a spell on you. I'm just like, that's Ava. That's Ava right there. Oh. There, we're done. We're out of images from the book.
I will say there's one thing Chronicles did. Franz Haber never comes back to life.
I mean, evolution didn't bring him back to life.
You've
yeah.
specified that they probably would have in season 2 if season 2 got made.
No, I don't think
I-
specified that.
I'm not
They might have.
100% sure of that.
There's good.
You did say that a lot.
Did I? I mean,
Yeah,
there's
you
good
did.
reason to
Wasn't
believe
me.
they might bring him back,
Yeah.
just so they could kill him again. Dramatic. There's only two
There-
reasons they bring
actually,
him back.
nah, there were-
Happy family reunion with Anthea, Aelita, because we all
Yeah.
knew that's where evolution was gonna go. Aelita gets reunited with her mother.
Here's a question: if there was a Chronicles 2, what would it be
Mhm.
about?
I think it would be a next generation story.
Really? Yeah, I guess you're right. It would be.
And
Xana.
except
Ew.
maybe
No.
Mago breaks free.
It's
from
kind of
prison.
implied he probably died or is like very injured.
I mean, it sounds like he drowned. He straight up just drowned. He
Yep.
crashed into the water and then it's like, oh yeah, no, we gotta drain the river
But
to find him.
He launched himself into the water at a pretty high rate.
It
from a
do
high
be like
scale.
that.
Like, yeah, if you he probably like got crushed by the water from hitting it on the impact.
Straight, he fell unconscious and then drowned. That's the likely scenario. He probably broke a bone or two when he hit the water, or a couple ribs. But
In the sequel, he
definitely
becomes a
drowned.
cyborg. He uploaded his consciousness to
To the supercomputer, and where he uploaded it to was immune to cone down. I mean, I don't really know because unless you do like a next generation thing, but then considering Chronicles sort of RTTP doesn't exist, you don't run into the issue of the Warriors would know right away the moment the first RTTP happens. But there's also the Warriors would notice something on the news at some point and be like, what are my kids doing? I think it just have to be, I don't know, some other ex-Carthage scientist who didn't get mind wiped built his own supercomputer and a bunch of kids found it.
I mean, that
his
would
version
be.
of the first city.
I honestly
then,
wonder because you'd really be straying away from the original source material at that point. That it would just be that might actually make a better story than this.
Honestly, if they hadn't just been like, oh yeah, the network, they never went on the network. If you had taken the network part of season 4 and just ran with it as oh no, there's like other Xanas on the internet and other ex-Carthage employees with their own supercomputers and their own super AI. And like you can have some of them like left Carthage because they didn't think Carthage was ambitious enough. Because Franz left Carthage because he disagreed with, he felt lied to, and he disagreed with what Carthage was going to be. So he left to destroy Carthage. But you could have some that just left because they're like, oh, Carthage isn't going far enough. And then you could probably have a couple others who were like who disagreed with the ethics of Carthage, and they left to destroy Carthage. Like you could have, I mean, I don't think you could probably do like another entire story arc of just one of the AIs, that one of the benevolent guys who were questioning the ethics of Carthage. But like you couldn't do it too many times because then it's just the same plot. But yeah, maybe like other ex-Carthage employees having created their own super AIs, either to outdo Carthage because they're like some Green Phoenix type organization, want to conquer the world.
What? We're probably overthinking this. I know I kind of skipped over it in my meme ending, but they did just rebuild Lyoko in the first city and Xana. It's possible that someone finds out that there's a super weapon over there and goes after it to use it for their own gain. That could be a plot.
Huh.
Basically Hannibal Mago Part 2, except this time it's like not
it's Grigory. Grigory escapes.
Grigory escapes prison, and then he gets. Oh, that's actually brilliant. Yeah, but he got his mind wiped, so he wouldn't remember.
Well, we know the mind wiping isn't infallible because Walter Stern was able to remember bits and pieces. Not
true.
A whole lot,
Yeah.
but. And it's possible Gregory was using those gloves. It's not impossible he figured out a way to make himself immune to it, so he just faked it, and he really remembers everything.
Dark Xana, likely the epilogue portion of the book takes place a couple weeks after all the events. So
yeah, odds that it's been 20 days
they
since
were
we saw
faking
Eva.
it long enough for the government to stop watching them.
Oh
and then
yeah,
they
Gregory's
got
Nightmare's got a point. Gregory's got a stack of tapes full of all these people's memories that he's had in his back pocket in case things don't work out with Mago.
Well, they didn't work out with Mago.
We didn't really defeat Gregory then. He could come back and he could cause trouble.
This is why Anthea should have just nervously shot him.
Oh my god.
Her finger trembled onto the trigger. And Grigory, the gunsmith that he probably would be, has a hair trigger on his gun, so it just went off.
Xana had a beautiful life and got himself a girlfriend, and now he has a kid and lives happily ever after.
Is this girlfriend Xena, a warrior princess?
Oh,
Yes.
Wait, it's Aelita. It's literally Aelita.
No.
Jeremy's super jealous.
Jeremy
recreates Xana just to get cucked.
Jeremy got cucked by Xana.
Oh, brilliant.
Jeremy just doesn't understand her like Xana does.
I'm sorry, Jeremy. It's not me, it's you. Xana's just a better boyfriend.
Like that. Like, no. You need to understand. Xana tried to stay out of the way for a while, but Jeremy ruined his own relationship. So
I'm annoyed they didn't. They should have had Yumi and Oric kiss. I'm so mad that the epilogue ends open-ended on it. Like, come on.
They're gonna get together.
Know.
It's pretty much implied that they're gonna get
Echoes
together.
did that too.
I don't know.
Echoes is much more vague.
Yeah, it's like it Echoes is more like you never know, but like with Chronicles, it's very clear. Yes, they're gonna get together.
Okay, I guess Chronicles is clear. I'm still annoyed it's open-ended though.
I mean,
What's
barely.
so hard about just setting the scene up? You could have set it up. Had it like Yumi grabs Ulrich before they go inside, or Ulrich grabs Yumi before they go inside the Hermitage. They have a quick little chat, and then just a kiss right at the end before they go in to eat dinner. Boom.
That's so
Boom. It's not
beautiful.
open-ended at all. Nobody's pissed off about it being sort of open-ended.
I honestly
I
think
mean-
the author, just because I wasn't thinking about the Origami relationship when I was reading the ending, I don't think that was a priority. It wasn't
It
getting them
wasn't.
together. It was literally everything else.
Also, for for Ulrich and Yumi being open-ended to actually be something to be angry about, you have to care about Chronicles in the first place. So, what do you have to tell us, Dylan?
Chronicles and its own charm and the way that it is so jankily put together.
Fair
I
enough.
still I disagree. I don't think it's as bad as The Room. I don't think it's so bad it's good. It's just it's a fun experience to give to other fans of CL to talk about how it works and how it doesn't. And to maybe but like
It
it's
mostly
not bad
doesn't.
enough.
It mostly doesn't.
We were talking about scenes in book 2. We're like, wow, this is actually like right from the show.
Okay.
Like
That's fair.
Yeah, but book
But-
2 is the only one that's like this could be in the
Book-
show.
Yeah,
That was
otherwise it's just like...
exclusively
and
book 2.
like there were moments like with Gregory's like stealing memories from the parents, and you were like, this is interesting. Where is this going?
Yeah. And...
Yeah, but again, butchering your source material isn't an excuse to.
I'm still disappointed.
Isn't an excuse, to overlook. Yes, it does interesting things, but it still butchers its source material.
I'm still
There's-
disappointed that they... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say there's a tolerance I have for, because I know everyone's interpretation of the source material is slightly different, and I can understand when you
Sure.
have an interpretation that's different than mine. But there's a point where I'm just like, okay, I don't. It's not that I don't just disagree with your interpretation. I don't think
It's wrong.
works with the source. Yeah, it's wrong.
Like, that's what it is with Chronicles. It's wrong.
The
So
thing
wrong.
is like
When I can sit and say list source examples from episodes to prove why you're wrong, then you're not doing it right.
Yeah.
let me see. Overbike is not in fight to the finish, just at all.
What the heck is an
Oh.
overbike, man?
Here's the example that came to mind when Kiwi ran out of Odd's room, which I don't think is something he would do, but that's harder to prove. And then he runs in. When Jim sees this dog, he pets down. He's like, "Oh, you're such a good boy," and he pets him. This is not in
What?
character for
Oh,
Jim.
yeah, that's right.
This is not in
That's
character for
right, I
Jim, and
forgot
I can
about
prove
that.
it with source material episodes, like from Holiday in the Fog, for example, or there's the lake. What other episode is he chasing the dog?
Oh, yeah,
is it
and then
Skid
there's-
Lanier? I think it is Skid Lanier.
Yeah.
There's also the adversity towards Kiwi that Yumi's parents hold.
Adversity.
Yeah.
No.
No. In Chronicles, Yumi brings up it'd be that her parents would freak out if she had a dog over.
Well, she thought that in that episode where
Which is
I forget the
yes,
name of the episode.
but-
Honestly,
Canine
No,
no,
it's not
that's a
Canine
space
Conundrum.
oddity. That's a space oddity.
it is
Yeah.
a space
Yes,
oddity
but
in the
by
space because
the-
that's when odds were like all in the space thing. Like
Yeah.
worried about his dogs. Like,
Mhm.
oh, I hope Kiwi gets the good food, and Yumi's like, "What are you doing? We're
This
in
is-
space."
But by the
This is
end
the
of
most
it,
beautiful thing you will ever see, and you're worried about your dog.
But by the end of it, they're very expressive that they like lychee,
Yeah.
and that
We
if
don't-
Odd ever needs him to be, if Odd ever needs someone to watch him, they will gladly do it.
Too bad he's back at home with his sisters.
And oh yeah, that gets mentioned in Evolution.
Yeah.
Chronicles just Chronicles really just kind of retcons Space Oddity because Space
Yeah.
Oddity didn't happen, so that
I
whole
mean,
bit.
basically, a bunch of season 4 didn't happen.
I'm disappointed because this means a lack of goodwill didn't happen. And that
No,
means
definitely didn't. Definitely did not happen.
Williams clone. Williams clone and
No, yeah,
Williams
there's
clone
no
didn't
Williams
happen.
clone in the Chronicles
Xana
canon.
William didn't
Yeah.
happen except for that one time.
And it wasn't even Lyoko, he was just possessed in the real world.
which is hold on, which is why Chronicles just cannot be, because if you don't have a lack of goodwill, then what are you doing?
Guys, do you know what
What
this
are you
means? It
doing?
means bad connection. Didn't happen.
You
Oh,
know
wait.
what? That
Is that the
well,
one I'm thinking of?
Bad Connection
Which-
could work. That's the one where Odd's parents come
Yeah,
and then Xana uses cell phones to possess the whole
wait,
crowd
no,
of
it
people.
can't. Well,
No, it
okay,
can't
not,
because he possessed people. He can't doesn't he's only
Yeah.
possessed
Yeah.
people that
This
one
means
time.
Bad connection
Not
didn't
only that,
happen.
Not only that though, but what's it? The personality of Odd's parents, like, it's just you can't really do that episode. Like, at
Yeah.
least you can't do it in the same form as the original episode was.
Like, Odd Parents totally could be secret agents to a certain extent. Like, you could have no, I'm saying you could have taken their canon character traits and made them just secret agents, and like that's the reason they travel so much, is because they're secret agents and their cover is that they're an opera singer and a actress.
Yeah, but again, the portrayal of the Della Robbias is that Robert is like an office job worker and the mom is a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah,
Like-
I know. I'm saying like they could have not done that and stayed more faithful, and it still would have worked.
That would have required the author to actually watch the show, which
Yeah.
I don't think he did.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe we should send the author our watchathon. Be like,
Oh my
here,
god.
before you write another Code Lyoko
I'm-
book.
I am sure that
That's
there are people
obnoxious.
who have like written letters to this guy beforehand. I don't think
Yeah,
we need
probably.
to
No,
torment the
I'm joking. It was a joke.
like
It
10
was a
years ago.
joke. It was a joke. I'm not being serious. Maybe we
Imagine-
can invite
yeah,
them
imagine
onto
this-
a rewatch-a-thon.
Oh my god. Imagine
Like,
this
we
book
read your
you
books
wrote
on stream.
10 years
we
ago.
loved them.
for-
Would you like to join us?
Oh,
No.
I don't even think he speaks English. Like these were originally written in Italian.
Yeah.
All right, we have been live for 2 hours and 30 minutes. It is time to end it.
We'll see you in a couple weeks.
We will be
or-
Yeah.
we will be on a undefined timed hiatus.
not a heresy, a hiatus.
Yep.
A heretical hiatus.
Mm-hmm.
I will be sure to make an announcement about what our next stream is probably going to be, / when it's going to be.
Stay tuned.
Until then, thank you everybody for joining us on this wondrous unicorn not filled adventure. Remember, Xana is a human now and a real boy, and we will see you guys next time. Bye bye.
So
Bye.
long.